We look weak, we look foolish, frankly, we look pathetic in the eyes of not only the world, but more importantly, our enemies. Is this final proof that we need to increase defence spending to fund getting our military into a functioning state again? On Cross Question 8, Labour MP David Pinto-Jasinski, Conservative MP Sarah Bull, filmmaker Neil Breakwell and broadcaster James Max. At 9, why do so many people seem happy to support the mad Mullah regime in Iran? I'll tell you, 2 words, Israel and Trump.
On your radio, on the LBC app, and
Play LBC.
Leading Britain's conversation. This is LBC.
From Global's newsroom at 7 o'clock. The first government-chartered evacuation flight from the Middle East is due to leave Oman around now. More than 136,000 Britons have told the Foreign Office they're in the region. The UK says it's bolstering defences. The Armed Forces Minister, Al Khan's, told LBC there's a reason HMS Dragon won't set off for the Eastern Mediterranean until next week.
That asset is used to support the Carrier Strike Group as an air defence platform. It is not used usually as a point defence platform of an island. And so it was getting prepared actually to go to a different location with a different weapons fit. To refit that system while we're doing maintenance on it takes some time. So we're working as fast as we possibly can.
In the last hour, the White House has said the Iranian regime's nuclear ambitions are permanently extinguished. Spokeswoman Caroline Levitt says 49 and counting Iranian leaders have been wiped off the face of the earth.
The terrorists made a bet that President Trump would be like many of his predecessors, that he would just talk and he would refuse to enforce his clear red lines. But that has proven to be a catastrophic error in judgment. When President Trump makes a threat, and I have reiterated that threat many times from this podium to all of you over the past year, President Trump does not bluff.
Iranian state TV is reporting 1,045 people have been killed. The conflict is expected to continue to spread across the Middle East. General Sir Richard Sheriff, a former Deputy Supreme Allied Commander of Europe, told Andrew anyone hoping for a quick end to the war is likely to be disappointed, particularly following the death of Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei on Saturday.
He is now effectively a martyred saint. And that is, frankly, about as subtle as murdering the Pope on the steps of St. Peter's. And the Americans need to have thought all this through, and the fact that they haven't, I think, is a real worry, a real indicator that this thing could well turn into something like Iraq to the power of 10.
In the Commons earlier, the leader of the opposition called for defence spending to rise more quickly. Baroness Ashton, former High Representative of the EU for Foreign Affairs, told Andrew Sir Keir Starmer probably agrees.
He's made quite a thing, as he did, I know today, about taking on the responsibility of defence spending. 14 years, he would argue, previous government not doing enough. But I think anyone really now, considering it very deeply, would be saying, actually, we need to come clean. This needs to go further and faster.
Experts have warned household energy bills could rise by 10% from July in response to the fighting. In other news, the husband of a Labour MP has been arrested on suspicion of spying for China. Joni Reid says she's never seen anything to make her suspect wrongdoing by David Taylor. LBC's Helen Hodinott has more from the Met Police.
They arrested a 39-year-old man at an address in London, a 68-year-old man at an address in Wales, and a 43-year-old man in Pontyclun, which is also in Wales. They've been detained and have been taken into police custody, where they remain now.
South West Water has pleaded guilty to supplying water unfit for human consumption. 4 people needed hospital treatment for cryptosporidium at Brixham in Devon 2 years ago. LBC's Andy Ballantyne has more.
It meant weeks without tap water for many, having to travel and queue at nearby water bottling stations, living under boil water notices. Some customers not able to shower or have a bath, and some telling me outside court that they still don't drink tap water.
And the Women's Minister says too many female employees are still facing unfair pay and having their health needs dismissed. Bridget Phillipson says from next month, larger firms in Great Britain will have the option to publish an action plan with their gender pay gap data, something that could become mandatory next year. In the city, the FTSE 100's closed up 83 points at 10,567. The pound buys $1.34 and €1.15. LBC weather, cloudy across Scotland and Northern Ireland, turning wet, dry elsewhere and a milder night for most of us, lows of 5 to 10 Celsius. From Global's newsroom for LBC, I'm Matt Hewitt.
This is LBC from Global, leading Britain's conversation with Iain Dale.
Hello, a very good evening. It's 7:05 on LBC. Welcome to the programme. It's Iain Dale here with you until 10. Don't forget, you can watch the programme now on our YouTube channel, also on Global Player, and of course the LBC app. Now, those of you of a similar vintage to me will remember the invasion of the Falkland Islands in 1982. The islands were invaded, I think I'm right in saying, on a Thursday. There was a parliamentary debate on the Saturday, and a task force of British warships set sail on the Monday, so literally 4 days after the invasion. Compare and contrast to the current situation, where we have one Type 45 destroyer, one, that should be going to Cyprus to help protect the RAF base there, RAF Akrotiri, after the drone strike by Iran on, when was it, Saturday, I think it was. That ship still hasn't set sail, and according to the government, it's not going to set sail until maybe next week or even possibly the week after. How embarrassing is that? Why have we only got one of these destroyers? Because I think there are 5 altogether, and I think the other 4 are being repaired. It makes us look fools in the eyes of the world. Well, earlier this evening, the government's Armed Forces Minister, Al Carnes, explained to LBC why it's going to take quite so long for this Royal Navy ship to leave the UK for Cyprus.
That asset is used to support the Carrier Strike Group as an air defence platform. It is not used usually as a point defence platform of an island. And so it was getting prepared actually to go to a different location with a different weapons fit. To refit that system with different types of weapons while we're doing maintenance on it, weapons and welding don't often go well together, takes some time. So we're working as fast as we possibly can. We've reduced the timeline significantly to get that asset rolling. But it's worth just talking
what is
Tom,
the timeline now, Mr. Cowan? Sorry, what do we think we can have?
Tom, I was just trying to say to you that in between that, and this is the military facts of the situation, that a £1 billion asset used to protect the Carrier Strike Group is not the only way in which you can defend point assets, whether they be Cyprus or across the Middle East. And at the moment, we've had a significant amount of success shooting down Iranian capabilities or neutralising Iranian capabilities, whether that be Iraq, with our regional partners in Qatar. And I always call it that line backing operation, which is working really, really effectively.
So that means that effectively RAF Akrotiri is defenceless until that ship gets there, because what that ship will do is provide air cover. It's the only ship we have in service which can do that. And this shouldn't come as a surprise to anyone, because anyone who listened to the Sky News podcast, The War Game, where they effectively war gamed what would happen if the Russians launched an attack on us, I was appalled to hear that there was only one of these in service, and effectively the whole country has no air defences. Can you believe this? Now, we can go back and we can look at who to blame for this, and I do blame the last government. I blame the Blair and Brown government as well as the various Conservative governments since 2010, because it is negating your national duty to keep this country safe by investing in not just warships, but the technology that can provide air cover and repel, rather like the Israelis do, repel any incoming missiles. We don't have that. If the Russians today launched an air attack on this country, we would be completely defenceless. How on earth has it come to this? So my question to you is, does this not underline the fact that we not only have to increase defence spending, but we have to do it now? We can't possibly wait until 2028, 2030. And the government talks a good game about saying it's going to increase defence spending, but they've laid out no plans for doing so. And then you look at the Chagos deal that is effectively going to cost us £30 billion over the next few decades. Well, that's £3 billion a year, which will presumably come out of the defence budget, which will count to increased defence spending, and then we won't let our allies actually use it. I mean, there is something seriously going wrong here, isn't there? If the government of this country, whether it is a Conservative government or a Labour government, can't do the basics. Now, I understand why defence spending was cut initially after the end of the Cold War, but we're now spending so much on welfare benefits that we can't actually afford to increase defence spending. Something is going to have to give. Are you convinced, A, that we need to do increased defence spending, and B, are you prepared to make the sacrifices in order to do so? Because there are only three ways of increasing defence spending. That is to tax people more, that it is to reduce spending, or it is to borrow. Well, I think we can all agree we're probably borrowing too much already, so let's rule that one out. So it's either tax rises or spending cuts. Or do you have another alternative? 0345 6060 973. Connor Wilson is Defence and Politics Correspondent for the Daily Express and is a former British Army officer. Connor, very good evening. How has it come to this?
I'm sort of fed up of hearing the blame game of it was your fault. No, it was Tony Blair's fault. No, it was David Cameron's fault. No,
it's all their fault.
It is all their fault, but arguing about that for the last 2 years has not got us any further to actually addressing the problem. The fact is, it is Labour's problem to solve. The fact is that during the general election, they knew, as we all did, that defence spending needed to be increased. Was it in their manifesto? No. They had to be dragged kicking and screaming to a defence spending increase by Donald Trump. If Kamala Harris had won the election, I don't think we would have had the pledges on defence spending that we've had. But pledges are just pledges. They mean nothing unless it's actually backed up by the Treasury. You speak to small, medium enterprises, people who are getting drone orders from Norway. They're getting orders from Germany. They're not getting them from the MOD. And they're not going to do it for free. They did that in COVID and they learnt the lesson on their bottom line. They need the orders to start making the kit and equipment that we need. And what will happen is in 2 years, when we finally wake up and say we need these drones, we'll join the back of the queue because Norway, Germany, and all these other countries that are investing in their defence now will be ahead of us.
Because if you look down the league table of NATO countries and their defence spending, we used to be number 2 after the United States. I think I'm right in saying, you probably know this better than I do, but I'm pretty sure I read earlier this week that we're now number 12. I mean, again, a national embarrassment.
Yeah, it's the equivalent of Spurs. We were once up there and now we're sliding down quicker than we can barely believe. When I was born, defence spending is 4.1%. Now, we've got pledges of 2.5%, 3% in the next decade. I don't understand the point of pledging something in a parliament in which it's very unlikely that you're going to be in government. It's like my 9-year-old telling Anthony Joshua that in a decade he'll be bigger than him and he'll be able to beat him up. It doesn't really help him right now, and he could still get beaten up by Anthony Joshua. So we need to scale quickly. I don't know how much more it will take. The British RAF base was unable to stop a relatively cheap drone from landing 200 metres away from airmen and their families. Had that been 200 metres another way, we could be having a very different conversation now, and things could be even worse than they already are.
So in terms of air defences, do you agree with my analysis that we might as well not have any, because having one of these ships, I mean, if the ship is in the wrong place, it's going to be of no use at all. You've got to have several of them. And as I understand it, the others that we do have are not going to be able to be used for quite some time.
Yeah, so we've got 6 Type 45s in all. We've got 3 in deep maintenance. So forget those. Some of them have been in deep maintenance for years, and I mean years. So forget them as a capability. Now, HMS Dragon is one of 2 that was in maintenance and is still in maintenance. We had HMS Duncan, who was held at 3 days' notice to move. I find it very odd that it wasn't HMS Duncan that was set sail. 3 days' notice to move, that means that from the point they get the order to go, they would be set sail within 3 days. Western officials I've spoken to have been able to give no clear explanation as to why HMS Dragon, which is still in maintenance and has a longer notice to move period, is not setting sail until next week, and it'll take another week for it to get there. So we're looking at a fortnight of a lack of defence on Akrotiri. But the point here is Donald Trump launched his so-called beautiful armada in late January. Now, as military planners, we plan of the most likely course of action and the most dangerous course of action. Now, there are a number of places where you might need this Type 45. You look at the Arctic, you look at the threats there. You look at events that could happen in the Channel, because you're always thinking of what might happen and what's the most likely. But if you look at Donald Trump sending an armada to Iran, given what he did on his operation to destroy the nuclear bunkers, The most likely course of action for me was that Iran would receive military action and that Iran would retaliate and Cyprus would be in range. So for me, I find it shocking that one of these vessels, whichever one it was, wasn't set sail much earlier.
Connor, thank you. That's Connor Wilson there, Defence and Politics Correspondent for the Daily Express. Our next guest is Colonel Philip Ingram, former British Army intelligence officer who's co-founder of the Defence on the Brink campaign group. Philip, welcome. Tell us what the On the Brink campaign group does.
Well, on the Brink is trying to bring up-to-date information on what's going on across defence and where defence is being applied in different theatres of operations around the world, which seem to be increasing rather rapidly at the moment.
Well, indeed. If we look at defence procurement, the MOD has not had a brilliant track record on spending money wisely. I think back to the 1980s when I think Michael Heseltine, when he was Defence Secretary, brought in Sir Peter Levine to try and improve things. I'm not sure how much things have improved since then. But why does it take so long to commission new defence products, ships, aircraft, whatever? It can take many, many years to do. So in effect, even if we commission something in 2026, it's unlikely to come into service until into the 2030s, I guess.
Well, it takes many, many years because what the Minister of Defence does is it articulates a requirement. There's usually something out there in the market that would fulfil that requirement, but it decides that it has to be built in the United Kingdom. Now, that's good because we need to maintain our own ability to build our own defence equipment. But the numbers that are ordered are so tiny that each vehicle or piece of equipment is almost bespoke. And whenever the Minister of Defence confirms the plan with the defence prime, the manufacturer that's going to make it, they then tend to start to tweak it as different people go through and manage the project. And every tweak requires everything to be re-looked at again and changed and costs even more money. And what they end up with is something that is gold-plated, diamond-encrusted and doesn't work. And that's the problem. Defence is always going for an ultimate solution, 100% never, rather than an 80% solution today. And we as the taxpayers see the debacles that there are in the management of different programmes. Just look at the Army's Ajax programme. Just look at the Wedge-tail radar programme for the RAF, and a number of others over the years. Billions and billions of pounds of taxpayers' money is being wasted, and nobody is being held to account.
See, the thing is, if we look back to the 1930s, when eventually the then national government recognised the threat from Adolf Hitler and started rearming at a rate of knots, that wouldn't be possible to do nowadays, would it? Given the complexity of the supply chain, given the high-tech nature of modern warships and aircraft and drone technology, we would be left almost defenceless if the Russians decided over the next 2 or 3 years to launch an attack on us, particularly an air attack.
Very much so. Now, there would be the ability to increase our capability with a much lesser weapon set that's out there than the British military have got at the moment. But an awful lot more of something that works is a lot better than a very small number of things that don't work. And this is getting this mentality and this mindset right. And also you're looking at the way contracts go in. I remember, and this is going back a number of years, when the Chieftain tank was in, and I was in the Royal Electrical Mechanical Engineers at the time. There was a float valve in the fuel tank, which was a yellow dot squash ball. And the Minister of Defence paid hundreds of pounds for this, and I could go down to the local NAFI shop and buy exactly the same yellow spot squash ball that came in the same little box for about 2 Deutschmarks 50. And this is where defence is being ripped off left, right and centre across the board. And that was one component. Magnify that out to the hundreds or thousands of components you get in complex pieces of equipment. And that's what goes on. That's why defence taxpayers' money is being wasted hand over fist.
Which makes the idea of increasing defence spending sort of look almost ridiculous when you know that a percentage of it, I mean, I don't know how much you would estimate this percentage, but a percentage of it is going to be wasted. And Keir Starmer and Rachel Reeves have both said, look, every pound of taxpayers' money has got to be spent properly. But in the world of defence procurement, that really has never happened, has it?
It hasn't. The Polish defence budget is about 20% less than the British defence budget, 10 to 20% less. We are converting 143 Challenger 2 tanks to Challenger 3. The Poles are buying 1,000. We don't have any current armoured tracked 155mm artillery for the British Army, or plans to get new ones. The Poles have just bought 1,000. Now, they don't have the independent nuclear deterrent that we have, but that should not be bleeding our defence budgets dry as much as they are. And it comes down to underinvestment that there's been for multiple governments going back from Tony Blair and the whole way through, and even going back before then. But what we haven't seen is, with the latest activities that are going on in Europe between Ukraine and Russia, and then we've got the Middle East blowing up. Rachel Reeves had the opportunity to turn around and say in her statement earlier on this week that she was going to give more money to defence immediately to allow urgent operational requirements to bring in these air defence capabilities to protect British interests and British citizens in Cyprus and elsewhere. She didn't allocate anything. And that says where the government is coming from. It's all talk. We want to do this, but it's all jam tomorrow. And they talk about increased defence budgets, but as you said, the Chagos deal is being front-loaded, and the money for the front-loading of that, billions of pounds, has had to be allocated out of in-year money this year and in-year money next year. And the Afghan data leak that happened, again, the money for potential compensation for that has been front-loaded against in-year money this year and next year, which effectively means that even though the government is saying by percentage of GDP we've increased the defence budget, they've put more commitments against it. And the reality is, for the next 2 to 5 years, the actual money that's available for defence to be able to allocate and spend to help training and quick programmes and all the rest of it has been cut.
It's all very depressing. Philip, thank you very much indeed for depressing us. That's former Colonel Philip Ingram. Look, the simple question is, if all the political parties agree, and possibly apart from the Greens they do, that defence spending needs to increase, well, none of them have said how they're going to pay for it. None of them. So how would you pay for it? I mean, are you willing to see cuts in public services, for example, to help pay for it? Are you willing to see cuts in the welfare budget, which is frankly the biggest budget, where you could sort of slice off some of it and allocate it to defence? You can slice off a bit from education or the Home Office or the Foreign Office, but that isn't going to butter many parsnips, as James O'Brien might say. We've got to think big, haven't we? Or do you think that maybe taxes should go up? I mean, that's anathema to many people, including me. I would not want to see tax go up because we're at the highest tax level since 1945. What's your solution? 0345 6060 973. It's 23 minutes past 7.
Hear every side of the story. This is LBC.
AO members get 10% off hundreds of laundry appliances in AO's Big Spin event. Save a load on brands like Haier, AEG and Hisense. Membership also unlocks unlimited free delivery and free recycling of your old appliance. All from the UK's most trusted electrical retailer. Join now and start saving at ao.com. Verify at ao.com/trust. Membership charged annually at $39.99.
A Southern train is a place where you can have more me time. A chance to skip traffic and glide to wherever you need to be, with headspace to focus on more important matters, like if that cloud is a starfish or sunflower. Fast journeys without the rush with great deals at southernrailway.com. Terms apply.
At PensionBee, we believe that when your pension is in a good place, you're in a good place. Download the app or go to pensionbee.com and be pension confident when investing your capital is at risk.
Hi, I'm looking for a pair of jeans.
Right. Low slung, slouchy, wide leg, bower leg, curved leg, flared, straight or skinny.
Blue?
Fashion. It's hard to keep on top of. Other things, like the upcoming changes to renting, are a bit easier. As a landlord, you will need to get on top of these important changes. They will affect how you manage your tenancies. Act now. Read the guidance at gov.uk/renting is changing.
Iain Dale on LBC.
7:25. Let's go to Dan in Cambridge. Hello, Dan.
Hello, Ian. How are you?
Good, thank you. What would you like to say?
Well, I'm rather pessimistic, frankly. I was an army officer in the 90s, and the problem predates my service period. We had, in the 90s, we had 2 defence reviews. We had the Strategic Defence Review and Options for Change, both which cut the government budget for defence. Defence back then was the 4th largest government spending area. But it was the easy spending area to take a pinch, because the rest that sat above it in the spending priorities for the government were unthinkable in terms of making savings. That was welfare, health, and education. And it's the same today. So I'm afraid I have a very pessimistic prognosis that we don't have politicians of this generation and era that want to have a sensible conversation with the public and put defence higher up that priority level, because they'll speak a good speak, but when it comes down to it, I'm afraid defence is still the easy soft belly target.
It's weird, isn't it? Because as you say, this goes back. I mean, we've been talking about sort of from Tony Blair onwards. It actually started, as much as I hate to say this, under Margaret Thatcher. If you look at the defence review that Sir John Knott, when he was Defence Secretary, was carrying out, sort of decimating the Royal Navy. And it was more by luck than judgment that we were even then able to fight the Falklands War, because if it had happened a couple of years later, I don't think we would have been. And I certainly don't think we would be now.
Well, we've got the trade-off. We've got the Cold War dividend that's run its course, and with the politics and the geopolitics today, it's a bit late to say that we should be an independent nation when it comes to defence spend, because it'll take 30 years to recover this. I'm afraid it's taken 30 years of penny pinching. It'll take 30 years to recover. So we can talk as much as we like, but I'm afraid the prognosis is poor.
And having served in the armed forces, I mean, I don't think things will have changed much in the procurement processes. It takes so long for a project to come to fruition. And then by the time it does, inevitably almost, the technology can be out of date.
Well, that's right. There's a wonderful book, Lions, Lambs and Dinosaurs, that talks about the procurement headache back in the 90s, and the situation hasn't gotten any better. The lions being the wonderful frontline service people, the lambs being the politicians, and the dinosaurs being the procurement sector. So I'm afraid nothing's changed.
God, you're depressing me even more than Philip did.
I'm sorry. I wish I had a straightforward answer for you this evening, Ian.
No, well, look, I'm not blaming you at all, because I think it is a very depressing state. And we kind of need somebody to give the whole system a shake-up. And I wonder whether Al Carnes, this Labour MP, who's now a junior defence minister, former British soldier, I think. I mean, he talks a good game, but he's only a junior minister. I mean, I wonder how different it would be if he was actually the Secretary of State. And I actually have a lot of time for John Healey. I think John Healey does understand that things need to change. But unless you've got number 10 on your side in this, and I think we saw that when Boris Johnson was Prime Minister, we saw it when Rishi Sunak was Prime Minister, that they did not prioritise defence either. Dan, thank you. Let's go to Rory in Glasgow. Hi, Rory.
Hello, Ian. I'd only like to make a sort of brief contribution, and I wouldn't certainly, with my limited experience, presume to talk or speak for those with military or strategic experience. I just think that perhaps Keir Starmer's performance in Prime Minister's questions today is a bit overblown. I don't think, he's overperformed. I don't know what you think. Perhaps you could share your perspective.
Well, I didn't actually see it today. It's the first one I haven't seen for quite a few weeks, so I can't really enlighten you.
I don't know. I just think that we're kind of sort of avoiding the fact that he's been embroiled in scandal himself. And this is his opportunity to make himself look better against the backdrop of all the terrible things that he's done. But again, perhaps I'll defer to you.
Well, if that was his priority, I think he would have probably taken some different decisions on what to do about supporting the Americans in Iran, because you're right that when prime ministers get involved in wars, well, they either rise to the occasion or they don't, and it is an opportunity to rise to the occasion. But given that Keir Starmer has decided not to back America in this, I mean, he can, I suppose, reasonably say, as he has said, I'm doing what I think is in the national interest. But I'm not sure it cuts a lot of ice when we see other countries like English-speaking countries, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, all taking a different point of view. And Mark Carney is certainly not a right-winger. Anthony Albanese is a Labour Prime Minister in Australia. So this is not a sort of right versus left thing.
Well, it's certainly a far cry, and that was certainly a long time before me. Margaret and Ronnie But what do I know?
Well, look. Don't do yourself down, because I think everybody struggles with these issues. I'm not sitting here pretending to be an expert on defence policy, but I think we can all see when something isn't working in our defence policy at the moment, and it's not only Keir Starmer's fault. This has been going on for many, many, many years.
No, I quite agree, Ian, and actually it's the one time where he's legitimately able to blame the government that went before him.
I agree.
Albeit he does it all the time, and it doesn't cut any ice in those senses. But anyway, listen, I will give you peace, Ian. I've called in before. I will try and keep it a long time before I call in again, but thank you very much for your time, as ever.
Phone in whenever you like, when you've got something to say. Rory, thank you very much indeed. A text here from Ruth who says, why do you always stress yourself so much on rather silly matters? How on earth is the defence of this nation a silly matter? It says, too much good is happening. Please look around. Well, it goes back to that maxim, doesn't it? Sort of bad news is news, good news is advertising. I do try and talk about good things that are happening, but at the moment, it's quite difficult to do so, isn't it? Right, more of your calls in a moment. It's 7:31. Let's get the news headlines on LBC with Matt Hewitt.
The Prime Minister's insisting the special relationship with the US will endure, despite criticism over his initial refusal to allow America to use British military bases in raids on Iran. Israeli strikes on Tehran are continuing for a fifth day. They claim to have carried out a wide-scale strike on an Iranian military compound. Earlier, the US torpedoed an Iranian warship in the Indian Ocean. It says in total it's hit 2,000 targets since Saturday. The UK says it's bolstering defences, with warship HMS Dragon expected to leave for Cyprus next week after its weapons system is refitted. More flights are being arranged to help British nationals stranded in the Middle East, with the first evacuation plane due to have left Oman around now. NATO's former Deputy Supreme Allied Commanders told LBC's Andrew Marr the war will last much longer than anticipated, becoming a very, very prolonged, nasty state of affairs. LBC weather. Cloudy across Scotland and Northern Ireland, turning wet. Dry elsewhere tonight, lows of 5 to 10 Celsius.
This is LBC.
Buying a home on a holiday park was the retreat you always wanted. But then came unexpected site fee increases. And that was before the dramatic loss in value. If you bought a home on a holiday park in the UK, you may have been missold. holidayparkadvicecentre.co.uk could help you receive thousands in compensation. Text ASSIST to 78900. That's ASSIST to 78900.
Some days it feels like your to-do list just won't quit. When life gets hectic, let Halfords take something off your plate. We're here when you need us, with trusted experts ready to help you tick off MOTs, servicing, tyre fitting and more. So your car's ready for whatever's ahead. So why put it off? Get in touch or drop in today. Book online at halfords.com or give your local Halfords garage a call and we'll sort it. So you can keep moving with confidence.
At TfL, we're opening up more of London for everyone with step-free access. We're continuing to improve accessibility at many of our stations, and now over 200 stations and counting have step-free access, including the entire Elizabeth Line, DLR and all tram stops. That is how we're making the greener way to travel more accessible to all. Search TfL Improvement Plan. To the Mayor of London and TfL, every journey matters. Greener than total estimated petrol and diesel car emissions.
Leading Britain's conversation. Iain Dale. Alexa, send a comment to LBC.
7:34 on LBC. We'll come back to your calls on defence spending in a moment. But first, a Labour MP has said that she has not seen anything to make her suspect her husband has broken any law after he and two others were arrested on suspicion of spying on behalf of China. Helen Hoddinott joins us, LBC's reporter, to give us more details of this, on the face of it, very, very strange case. Helen.
Evening, Ian. Yeah, so earlier today, police said they'd arrested 3 people as part of a counter-terror probe into suspected breaches of the National Security Act in relation to China. Commander Helen Flanagan, the head of counter-terror policing in London, said they arrested a 39-year-old man at an address in London, a 68-year-old man at an address in Wales, and a 43-year-old man in Pontyclun, also in Wales. Wales. They were detained and taken into police custody. Officers carried out searches at those 3 locations and also 3 other addresses in London, East Kilbride and Cardiff. They were supported by colleagues from Counter-Terror Wales and Scotland. LBC can confirm that one of those who was arrested is David Taylor, who is the husband of sitting Labour MP Joni Reid. She's the MP for East Kilbride and Straven. She was first elected in 2024 and is a member of the Home Affairs Select Committee. She's issued a statement this afternoon which says, "I have never been to China. I have never spoken on China or China-related matters in the Commons. I have never asked a question on China-related matters." She said, "As far as I'm aware, I've never met any Chinese businesses whilst I've been an MP, any Chinese diplomats or government employees, nor raised any concern with ministers or anyone else on behalf of, even coincidentally, Chinese interests." She said, "I am not any sort of admirer or apologist for the Chinese Communist Party's dictatorship." And then on her husband, her statement said, "I've never seen anything to make me suspect. My husband has broken any law. I'm not part of my husband's business activities, and neither I nor my children are part of this investigation, and we should not be treated by media organisations as though we are. Above all," she said, "I expect media organisations to respect my children's privacy." So that is a statement from Labour MP Joni Reid, whose husband David Taylor has been arrested today on suspicion of spying for China. And this, of course, comes after the collapse of the trial of 2 other men accused of spying for China, Christopher Cash and Christopher Berry, last year. Both of those men denied wrongdoing, and the CPS said at the time there wasn't enough evidence to continue with the prosecution. Today, Security Minister Dan Jarvis gave this update on today's arrests to MPs.
"As this is a live investigation, it would not be appropriate to comment further. But let me be clear. If there is proven evidence of attempts by China to interfere with UK sovereign affairs, we will impose severe consequences and hold all actors involved to account."
So the Speaker of the House of Commons has also told MPs that David Taylor did not have a security pass, and police say that inquiries are ongoing.
Helen, thank you very much indeed. That's Helen Hoddinott, LBC's reporter. Right, back to your calls on whether we need to spend more in defence, and if we do, how's it going to be funded? Let's go to Sue, who's a first-time caller in Bromley. Hello, Sue.
Oh, hello. How about this, Ian? What about what we give the royal family each year? For a couple of years, and we said we really need that money for defence, rather than cut people who are already really struggling now. And they won't miss it because, you know, they've got so much property. What do you think about that?
How much does the royal family get each year from the taxpayer?
Quite a few million. I'm not sure myself, but they do get quite a few. Well, and it would help the defence, wouldn't it? Be a little bit.
Well, it would be a very little bit. You're absolutely right. And it may be that we have to look at getting little bits off all sorts of different budgets. So I'm not saying that's necessarily a bad idea. But given that the MOD budget at the moment, I think I'm right in saying is about 60 billion, to my mind, that is going to have to go up probably by the beginning of the next decade to more like 100 billion. So 40 billion pounds is going to have to be found.
Yes. Yeah.
Now, I mean, slicing off 10 million, 20 million, whatever it is from the royal family, in fact, I think it's a bit more than that, that is going to be a bit of a drop in the ocean. As I said before, I think the welfare budget is one that would have to be looked at, but that's going to cause a lot of screams from a lot of people.
Well, it's a bit unfair. I mean,
everything's unfair,
helps, doesn't it, Ian? Even if we got so many million, every little bit will help. But to cut more people when they're struggling now, when they've got so much, I just think it's so unfair, really unfair.
OK, thank you very much indeed, Sue. Let's go to Sarah in Deptford. Hi, Sarah.
Hello, thank you for taking my call. I listen to LBC, and I've heard that Germany borrowed money for defence, and you know that didn't shake the market. So I mean, I think it's terrible that we're not actually doing something now with defence. I never believed in reducing the defence budget because, in my opinion, isn't the government's first priority to protect us?
Well, I completely agree with you. I think the point on Germany, I'm not sure that stacks up because the German public finances are way better than ours. So they probably have a lot more scope to borrow than we do. So look, if you look back to the Second World War, where between 1936, when our defence spending was 4% of GDP, by 1943, I think it was something like 45% of GDP. Now, I'm not suggesting that we need to go that far because we are not at war. But that ruined our public finances for decades to come. And I don't think that any of us want to get into a situation where that happens.
Well, I kind of feel we are kind of at war, though. Do you know what I mean? I mean, we're supporting Ukraine. You know, we've got the Iranian thing happening now. You know, we've had China spy on us, whatever. We've had cyber war. I mean, there's different types of war, isn't there?
Well, that is true, and that's very different from before because we are involved in a cyber war with Russia, with China, with North Korea, and probably one or two other places too. It's very rarely talked about, but there are attacks going on daily into this country from those countries, and we hit back. And again, that isn't talked about much either.
No, it's not. And I just think that we can look at the triple lock. We can look at welfare. I think they are two really big budgets. I think we need to clean up the spending in the NHS. I'm sorry, I do. I'm not saying we should have an American system. I'm just saying we need to clean up the waste in the NHS.
Yeah, well, you're absolutely right on that. Gary tells me that the sovereign grant to the royal family last year was £86 million, which sounds a hell of a lot of money. It's more than I thought it was. But that wouldn't even buy you a fighter bomber, would it? So, but the idea of making every department contribute to what we maybe ought to call a defence fund. I mean, for example, why is it that people under retirement age get 30% off train fares? I mean, I don't know what that costs each year, but you'd have thought, I mean, even if that's probably in the tens of millions of pounds, why isn't that changed to people over the age of retirement age, 67, that you only get the 30% off on a senior rail card after 67? I mean, there are all sorts of things that you could salami slice, each one of which would encounter public opposition for understandable reasons. David is in Mill Hill. Hello, David.
Good evening. I really think without being disrespectful, there's one thing we need to do that would generate a lot of money for us very quickly, and that's the amount of money we're going to be spending on net zero. We have to stop net zero. We have to maybe build some the things they put on the roofs. We should have our own factory, not be buying them from China, first of all, so to give some employment, because they do help. But the fact of the matter is we are spending millions, or going to be spending billions and billions and billions of pounds on net zero for the sake of 1% of what we put into the atmosphere. We should start getting the oil and the gas fields going again, or if they haven't stopped, at least allow them to do to start drilling again. It is absolutely ridiculous. We've got the bandit Butty running it, incompetent man.
The what?
Sorry?
The what?
The bandit, what's his name? The bacon bandit. Couldn't eat a sandwich.
Oh, Ed Miliband.
Ed Miliband. Sorry, I was being, I was being facetious, but I think they should call him that. I just cannot see how much we're spending on net zero now and in the future. For example, how much extra is it going to cost to put outside boilers instead of gas boilers in 15 million homes? I bet that's a few billion before you start. I mean, it's just ridiculous.
Well, there there are all sorts of things which could be cut. I think you make a valid point. I'm not sure I'd want to abolish all spending on environmental matters, but that is quite a large budget.
Hold on.
You said abolish net zero.
Yeah, but that's not. I didn't say stop all of it. I said it's not. Environmental matters do matter to a degree, but not to the degree of what we're doing it for the sake of what we're getting 1%. I'm not saying we shouldn't worry about our waterways and making sure they're proper and the water's proper to drink. I'm not suggesting that. I'm suggesting the overall general aspect of all this money that's going to be spent on net zero.
Okay, thank you very much indeed, David. Let's take this text here, which says, it's from Dan, we need to make savings across the state to fund defence spending. Spending cuts can be reducing waste and unnecessary expenditure and not just thinking in terms of reducing pensions or disability benefit. Swathes of management layers, DEI and unnecessary bureaucracy exist. Billions can be saved. I totally agree with that. There are all sorts of things that you can do. I saw a text go through a minute ago, somebody saying, well, if we put 1p on income tax, we can all contribute to a defence fund. Well, up to a point, because that would only raise about £6 billion, and we probably need to raise something north of 40 billion. Thank you for all your calls on that. We will come back to that. But also, in the next hour, I'm going to be talking to some campaigners who are calling for increased funding to research brain cancer. It's 7:46.
Hey, smart speaker. Play LBC.
Good morning, I'm Nick Ferrari. It's time to get to your calls.
First time caller, a little bit nervous.
Thanks for taking my call. Thanks for taking my call.
I will say the UK has been very, very uncooperative. This is not Winston Churchill that we're dealing with.
Hear every side of the story.
So we are visiting Dubai on holiday. Unfortunately, the guidance that the UK government and embassy have been providing has been very conflicting.
We have booked 5 different flights from Dubai to London, and every single one of these flights has been cancelled.
Listen on our free Global Player app or the LBC app. LBC, leading Britain's conversation.
You want £1 million?
I'd love £1 million.
So you enter the birthday draw. It's a very personal draw. So you think of a personal way to spend £1 million.
I would hire a hype man, so everything I do would suddenly be epic.
It's a lucky day, and you win the birthday draw. So...
Let's go, Kev. Goat cheese bagel for lunch. Woo-hoo!
Is it your lucky day? For your chance to win £1 million, just search the birthday draw and enter now. From Global and ITV. 18 plus UK only. No purchase necessary.
With over 50 years' experience, Fidelity can help you feel confidently invested. Make the most of your annual allowances by the 5th of April with our expert insights, excellent service, and wealth of investment options. For ISAs, pensions, or advice, go to fidelity.co.uk. Your capital is at risk. Terms apply.
Turn up your taste buds with Dolmio Intensify pasta sauces. From mild creamy garlic and black pepper, to bold smoky garlic and sun-dried tomato, whoa, and spicy smoked paprika and chili. Woo-hoo! Try Dolmio Intensify, pasta sauces with serious flavour. Dolmio, yeah.
A message from TfL.
I saw Alicia's photo in my newsfeed. All I can think of is her family. How they're getting on. If they're getting on. I didn't look when I pulled out, and she never made it home. Sounds crazy, but it felt like her motorbike came out of nowhere. But I know the truth. I didn't look again.
Drivers, take another look, not a life. To the Mayor of London and TfL, every journey matters.
Serious about the right vitamins for you and your family? Trust VitaBiotics, the UK's #1 vitamin company for expert nutritional care for every age and lifestyle. Vitamins for everyone, including well man, well woman, well baby and well kid. From Boots, pharmacies and vitabiotics.com. For #1 verification, see vitabiotics.com.
Iain Dale on LBC. Text 84850.
7:49 on LBC. Now, patients with deadly brain tumours are being denied potentially life-saving genetic testing, according to a charity. The UK has one of the worst survival rates for the cancer in the developed world, but according to campaign group Brain Cancer Justice, there are new drugs that could benefit NHS patients. Well, we're joined by 2 representatives from Brain Cancer Justice, Georgie Maynard, co-founder of the campaign group, who was diagnosed with glioblastoma, I knew I'd get that wrong, glioblastoma in May 2023, and Matthew Wilson, also a co-founder, whose wife Zoe died from glioblastoma in April 23, aged only 37. Well, thank you for coming in, because I think we do a lot of interviews and phone-ins on all sorts of different types of cancer, but in 16 years, this is the first time I've talked to anyone about brain cancer. Now, that's probably my fault, but it's not seen as one of the sort of, even though it does kill many, many people and affects many people, it's never been at the sort of top of the league table, has it? There shouldn't be a league table.
I think there's a lot of confusion around it. So people talk about brain tumours and brain cancer, and you can get malignant brain tumours, which are brain cancer, and you can also get benign tumours. And I think sometimes the public don't realise that a brain tumour can be cancerous and malignant, and there's quite a lot of confusion around that.
And I think what's really surprising about this is that brain cancer is the biggest cancer killer of children and under 40-year-olds. It's more people die of brain cancer than prostate cancer if you're under 70.
Really?
So there's lots of facts
well, I've learned something already now.
Yeah. But we don't know about it, and yet the governments over time have said all the right words that this is something we should support, but where is the action?
How many people are affected by brain cancer each year on average, and is the number rising?
So around 13,000 people in the UK are diagnosed with a primary brain tumour every year, and more than 5,400 people lose their lives to a brain tumour every year. There isn't any clear statistics to show incident rates are increasing. However, we think one of the problems is a lack of good statistics. And in fact, 4 of the big brain tumour charities in the UK have only very recently come out with some clear statistics. And it's surprising that those charities have had to do that, because we think the Department of Health and the government should have a clear handle on this. Because how do you solve a problem if you don't understand it? And understanding how many people are being diagnosed, what treatment they're getting, where they're being treated, and whether they're getting certain things like whole genome sequencing, which when we tried to ask with freedom of information requests, it's very difficult to get that information from the department.
Now, we know that there's a big campaign to introduce better testing for prostate cancer, and West Streeting, I think, wants to do something on that, but the experts say they're not sure it would actually be productive if they did do that. So diagnosis with any disease is important. I mean, I do some work for the Royal Osteoporosis Society, and they've got a campaign to persuade West Streeting to spend £30 million on screening, particularly for men, because a lot of people don't even realise men can get osteoporosis. What could the government do to have better diagnosis?
So that's a really good question, because MRIs are needed to find a brain tumour, and we've talked about kind of screening people proactively. Well, we're not going to give everyone an MRI every time they go to the supermarket. That's just not going to be practical. So I think investment in things like liquid biopsies, those researchers looking at using people's tears or blood samples, I think investment in that area will be really, really crucial. One of the challenges with brain cancer for both detecting it and diagnosing it is something called the blood-brain barrier. Now, you may be aware when somebody's pregnant, they have a placenta and it filters the blood to stop certain things getting to the baby. Your brain is protected in your central nervous system in the same way, so it stops bacteria and pathogens getting there as much as it can. But that also has a complication for the cells being shed into the kind of blood to then detect them with a blood test, and also in the delivery of drugs as well when you actually try to treat these tumours.
So in terms of what to look out for, because a lot of people, I mean, I think there's been some brilliant campaigns on breast cancer awareness, brilliant campaigns on testicular cancer. But what tips can you both give, given your own experiences, as to what people listening to this programme should look out for?
Well, there are some who have signs before it's diagnosed. So they will say that they've got something in their legs going on, it's a bit wobbly, or they'll have headaches and migraines, or they'll feel a bit sick, or just a general sense, and there's a map out there if anyone's interested in looking at to look into. We've got one on our website, Brain Cancer Justice. But it's really important to also consider those who've got no idea, and that was the case for me. So when I had my brain cancer happen to me, I had a seizure. I'd just driven the kids out, and I got home. I'd taken the 5 minutes outside and went, oh no, it's too hot. Came back inside, had the seizure there, and I
mean, you say seizure. What? I mean, we think of sort of epileptic fits, something like
basically,
that.
I just out. Yeah. I didn't wake up for 20 minutes, but when I did wake up, I was very lucky because I had 2 ambulance crew. My brother and his wife were there, and that made, I was just very lucky. But if you'd been on your own? But if I'd been on my own, there'd be no sign of it. And actually, in that sense, there's a lot of people who we don't know why they have driven into something. And the person I know, she was driving and had a GBM. She was driving her children before they found out, and they had a car crash. We don't see that GBMs or brain cancer is a very large thing, but I think there are more that are just not diagnosed as brain cancer. So there's more to it than this. It just needs more research, more exploration around why has someone got it. Sometimes it's visual, but some of the time there's no signs.
And obviously seizures are at the sort of extreme end, and people are normally then diagnosed in an emergency setting in A&E. But at the other end of the spectrum, you have people that have lots of non-specific symptoms, so they go to the GP with headaches, which can be dismissed, or other strange symptoms. And I remember describing to my children about a brain tumour and saying, Mummy's got a brain tumour, and they're like, well, what's that? And I'm like, your brain is a big bossy computer that controls your body. So depending on which bit of your brain it's in, it can cause your leg to go wobbly or your vision to have problems. So I think just being persistent, if you've got an inkling that something's not quite right, and I'll give you a quick win in if you want, is eye tests. It's very unglamorous, but you might have had it, and they puff a little bit of air into your eye, and they check the pressure in your eye, and sometimes they can pick up if you've got an increased pressure in your brain. So just having those regular routine checks can be really crucial.
So if it's not too, well, it is obviously painful, but tell me about what happened to your wife.
So Zoe collapsed completely out of the blue. She's a teacher, she's fit and well. I was asleep, and there was an almighty crash in the shower. The baby was crawling around on the floor. She was getting ready for work. If it had happened a couple of hours later, she could have been driving him to nursery. I sort of broke down the door, called a friend. My elder son John was at home watching TV downstairs, and just went into sort of kind of panic mode. It was at the end of COVID as well, so the paramedics came and they went, oh, don't worry, she's probably just had a bit of a low blood sugar moment. She'll be back in a couple of hours. So off she went to the hospital on her own. I couldn't even go with her. And then I get a phone call a couple of hours later saying, we think you need to come to the hospital. We found something here that we weren't expecting. And it kind of just went from there, really.
And of course, women who are pregnant, we know a number of people who haven't been diagnosed because it's seen, oh, it must be because you're pregnant. So there's extra investment into why this person has had a seizure need to be explored.
What's the recovery rate?
For glioblastoma, it's non-curative.
There's no recovery. It's just a matter of time.
Because again, people think in the modern age that cancer is not what it was 30 years ago, that there's not a cure necessarily, but you can protract life. That's not the case here.
No, the average life expectancy for glioblastoma is 12 to 18 months.
Well, I've got to ask you about your own situation.
I'm one of the lucky that have got not 3 years. I'm at 2 3/4 at the moment. Only 5% get to 5 years. It's just a waiting time, but for many people, it comes on. And sadly, a lovely young girl, she lost her life only 13 days after finding out she had brain cancer.
And I think, Iain, as you pointed out, this graph shows it. I know the listeners can't see it, but we've had all these improvements in survival in other cancer types, and brain, esophagus, lung, and pancreas have been left behind. We've not seen any kind of real big improvement in that survival rate.
Well, I've just noticed the time, which shows how interested I am in what you're saying, because I should have kept a bit of a better grip on time. it is one of those things that I'm so glad you've come in, because I think a lot of people listening will be exactly the same as me, that yes, we've heard this term brain cancer, don't know anything about it, don't know what to look for. So I think you've actually really performed a public service by coming and telling our audience exactly what's happened to you both and your families respectively, and I could have talked to you for a lot longer. We may, when we're out of sort of war situation, we may get you back in and we'll do an hour's phone-in on it, because there'll be people listening who've been in similar situations to you both, I imagine. So thank you for coming in.
Thank you for having us in.
Now, coming up in the next hour, it is Thursday's Cross Question. We will be joined by Neil Breakwell, filmmaker, who's a former deputy editor of BBC Newsnight. David Pinto, I can never pronounce this name either. There's a theme here, isn't there? David Pinto-Dushinsky, who's Labour MP for Hendon. Sarah Bull, who's Conservative MP for South Northamptonshire. And James Max, broadcaster and columnist for the Financial Times. They're here to answer your questions on 0345 6060 973. And of course, don't forget, you can watch us on the LBC app, on Global Player, and the LBC YouTube channel.
On your radio, on the LBC app, and
Play LBC.
leading Britain's conversation. This is LBC.
From Global's newsroom at 8 o'clock, British warship HMS Dragon won't sail to the Mediterranean to defend a base in Cyprus until after the weekend, as a conflict in the Middle East continues for a fifth day. It needs to have its weapons systems refitted. Colonel Philip Ingram, a former British Army intelligence officer, told LBC there's been underinvestment from multiple governments.
Rachel Reeves had the opportunity to turn around and say in the statement earlier on this week she was going to give more money to defence immediately to allow urgent operational requirements to bring in these air defence capabilities. She didn't allocate anything. And that says where the government is coming from. It's all talk. We want to do this, but it's all jam tomorrow.
Well, the MOD says UK forces are bolstering their presence in the region. Israel struck a compound housing all of Iran's security bodies in Tehran, and American submarines also struck an Iranian warship in the Indian Ocean. In other news, a husband of a Scottish Labour MP has been arrested on suspicion of spying for China, along with two other men. Joni Reid says she's never seen anything to suspect her husband's broken any law. And experts think energy bills will rise by 10% from July. There's been a rise in the wholesale gas prices because of the conflict in the Middle East. In the city, the FTSE 100's closed up 83 points at 10,567. The pound buys $1.34 and €1.15. LBC weather turning wet across Scotland and Northern Ireland tonight. Dry elsewhere, lows of 5 degrees. From Global's newsroom for LBC, I'm Daryl Jackson.
I've looked after my kids since they were born. Now they've got kids, I still want to look after them. I don't want them struggling to make decisions about my money or my health if I can't. So we made a lasting power of attorney. Now, if I can't speak for myself, they'll speak for me. It's a weight off for all of us, isn't it?
Yes, Mum. Lasting power of attorney. Search your voice, your decision.
This is LBC from Global, leading Britain's conversation. Cross Question with Iain Dale.
Hello, a very good evening. It's 3 minutes past 8 on LBC. Welcome to Wednesday's Cross Question. On the panel with me, to my left, Sarah Bull is Conservative MP for South Northamptonshire. Next to her, David Pinto-Dushinsky, who's Labour MP for Hendon. To my right, James Max, broadcaster, columnist for the Financial Times and President of the Royal Albert Hall. What a great job title that is, eh? And of course, formerly of this parish. And next to him is Neil Breakwell, filmmaker, who's a former deputy editor of BBC Newsnight. They're here to take your calls, answer your questions on 0345 6060 973. You can WhatsApp on that number and you can text 84850, as well as watch us on Global Player, the LBC app and the LBC YouTube channel.
Call 0345 6060 973. Text 84850. Cross Question. Watch live on both Global Player and the new LBC app. This is LBC.
Right, let's take a text question from Scott, who says, as the son of a Royal Navy World War II Normandy veteran, I'm deeply concerned about the hollowed-out, under-resourced state of Britain's armed forces. Do panel members share my concern? And if so, what needs to be done to make our armed forces battle-ready and fit for the challenge of an increasingly hostile world? David, let's come to you.
Well, look, thank you for sharing that, Scott. And look, my starting point is I agree. I mean, the phrase hollowed out was first used by Ben Wallace, the former Conservative Defence Secretary, to describe the state of our forces, our Navy, but also our Army. Under the Conservatives, we currently have the smallest Navy since Napoleonic times. The Army shrank by, roughly 40%. And as the world becomes more dangerous, this is becoming more dangerous for our country. This is why we've outlined plans to take spending to 2.6% of GDP next year. That'll be the first time it's reached that in over, a decade and a half.
So a massive 0.1% increase.
Well, no. And so we've raised spending by the highest amount since the Cold War, and we've laid out the aspiration to go to 3%. This is real expenditure that's going to make a real difference.
You've outlined the aspiration, but what you haven't done is said how you're going to meet that aspiration. You've outlined the plans for the welfare budget up to 2031. If you can do it for the welfare budget, why can't you do it for the defence budget?
So look, we've laid out we ran a strategic defence review. We laid out the path, and we've actually dedicated the money, and that meant making some tough choices. So, when we were in the studio, I think we may have even debated this last year. We made the decision to take money from the international development budget to pay for an uplift to defence. And so we've made those decisions in the past. We've gone through that kind of process, and that's what we will do again. But as a result of the decisions we're making, and not just to invest in our forces, which is critical, but also to invest in our defence industries, we're seeing not just a grade to capability that will be coming online in the next few years, but also grade to capacity to work with others and to generate jobs, for instance, through the deal to sell 5 frigates to Norway.
Sarah Bull.
So look, you make some very interesting points about this. They've talked about, yes, we're going to be increasing spending, but as Kemi Badenoch actually said in the PMQs today, they talk tough, but they don't do anything about it. This defence investment plan is really important to actually lay out how we're going to put this investment in place. And they have been delayed. That was supposed to come out in autumn last year, and it hasn't. It still won't probably until the summer, because if they don't release it in the next few days, and Keir didn't seem to indicate that it would be coming out, then actually we're going to hit the elections with Purdah, then it's going to get pushed back. Now, this is really vitally important because we actually need to be getting there faster. We are in a very different world to what we were when we were even in power, but we could see this was coming. We need to get to 3%. Now, I was in PMQs in the statement on Monday, and I asked, because I know people who are out flying Typhoons from Akrotiri, and I asked them, they said, what do they say? We need resources and we need them now. I asked the Prime Minister, and all he said was, well, thank you very much for your service. We said in the spring forecast yesterday, Rachel had a perfect opportunity to give a little announcement about what extra are we doing, and they're not doing anything.
Hasn't Kemi Badenoch got a bit of a cheek when she stands up at PMQs and sort of berates Labour for not moving fast? Yet for every year she's been an MP since 2017, she's voted for budgets which have effectively cut defence expenditure.
And there always has to be a balance, I think, in terms of the expenditure. I think in this instance, we had the peacetime dividend. And we all realised at that point we weren't necessarily, the world wasn't gearing up for the fights that we are now in, and they are progressively getting worse. And I think since the war started against Ukraine, that's been the realisation point where we really need to do much more and faster. I'm also on the Armed Forces Bill Committee at the moment. And we're trying to look at what is the future of the armed forces going to look like. And that's in meaning increasing more reservists, is about getting defence spending on housing. It's looking at extension of the Armed Forces Covenant. But all of these things rely on the funding ultimately, and that has not been there, and Labour are not promising or getting us there.
Aren't you embarrassed by the fact that we have 6 Type 45 warships? Only 1 is in service. And that is apparently not ready to go to Cyprus to defend RAF Akrotiri because it was meant to be going to the Arctic. So they're now having to spend 10 days refitting it. I mean, goodness only knows what would happen if the Argentinians invaded the Falklands, where the task force went within 3 days to that.
Absolutely, and we're not in the same position to be able to do it.
This has happened under your party's watch.
Well, it's also, I think it's now both. The government have now had 2 years and they know where this is coming from. And as you said, they've made decisions about welfare. They can find money for other things, but they cannot find the money that is required here and now.
James Max.
I find it extraordinary. And Scott, thank you for your question, because I think panel members, certainly I do, share your concern. Because people up and down this country expect our government to keep us safe. They expect government to make good decisions about how they spend our money and the things that they've been warned and told about. For years, they have been told that defence is going to become more difficult, more complicated, more expensive. And politicians of all parties thus far have ignored the risks. They have continued to spend on welfare. Here we are, £334 billion will be spent on welfare in the year that they spend £61.7 billion on defence. So it means that government has to step back from all their political noise and chaos because we live in a different world. And that means that our priorities have changed. And I think what Scott is saying and what people up and down this country are saying is you need to make better decisions as politicians and stop fighting your political battles in your own little bubble and realise that the decisions that you are taking for people's lives are wrong. And that means that you need to move away from your ideology, you need to move away from your political posturing for your next election and make decisions which are proper and correct. So, for example, let's talk about the armed services and forces. We have denigrated, through our political posturing, the effect on the forces has been so negative that people don't want to be in the armed services and forces in the way that they used to be. The proud nation that we were and the proudness attached to that job and that role, how many armed forces individuals are now sleeping rough because we don't look after them after they leave their service? How many people up and down this nation are not necessarily treated with the respect that they should be in those services? So we've got to have a bit of a reset. And I don't want to play a sort of political game where you're saying it's your fault, you had the opportunity to spend a bit more. Spending 2.6% of GDP as opposed to 2.5% is going to make, stuff all difference. We have to make a major commitment. And we've got to upgrade in the sense that you can have all the strategic reviews you want. I actually think we've got to look at the waste that has been, when I was on this very parish, we used to talk regularly about millions had been spent on helicopters and on new equipment, and yet it was not in service because of the inefficiencies and the disappointing way it had been deployed. So it's not just about getting the right money in, it's about making sure it's spent correctly and dealing with all the problems that should be sorted out within this service so that people feel proud about the services, want to go into them, and that we get the very best brains in there. And Scott, going back to your question, I do share your concern, and action is required immediately.
I kind of want to play Land of Hope and Glory.
Excellent.
Neil Brown.
And what a great venue. I can
well, indeed.
Yeah, it's a numbers game, isn't it? You asked why was it that Thatcher sent the task force to the Falklands in 1982? Because they were spending 5% of their money, the country's money, on defence at that time.
But also looking to cut it.
Yeah, but it was still more than double than what it is now, and conversely, their welfare spending in that time was about 20%. Now we spend a third, so it's 30%. So it's not really a question of how much more do we spend more on defence about. If you've got almost close to zero growth, as we discovered yesterday in that spring statement, and has been the track record for years, it's a question of what do you not spend money on. And so if you want to spend more money on defence, which seems like a sensible thing to do given we're at war, you've got to have an answer to why you're not cutting other departments, particularly welfare, which is just a sort of astronomical bill now. It is eye-watering. And Labour had a chance to fix the welfare spending, and they backed off because the political will was not there, and Keir Starmer was unable, even with that majority, to get his troops through to cut the welfare. And until it seems to me that they can make some big inroads in that part, a third of our spending on welfare, the defence is limited simply because there's no other money to go around.
Do you think, though, that we get obsessed by this percentage of GDP figure, and we're actually, what we should be obsessed by is thinking, OK, What do we need in the next 20 years to defend the nation? What equipment do we need? Well, let's add all that up and then work out how we're going to pay for it, rather than having some arbitrary figure that Donald Trump dictates.
And that's exactly what we've done. I don't disagree. And by the way, it's not that it was 2.5%. I think under the Conservatives, it was 2.1%. We've seen an uplift across this period of, I think, about 8 billion quid. But you're absolutely right. It's got to start from capability and what do we need to do. And that's what we laid out in the broader national security strategy. But look, we are really clear that we are setting a path to 3%. And you're absolutely right. It's not about arbitrary figures, but it does need to be more money. But it's also not true that there was a peace dividend. Ukraine started in 2022, so the last government had several years, and frankly kicked a lot of these
2 years.
Yeah, but it kicked a lot of the big decisions down the line, and we are now picking up. And look, it's the same for welfare. That once again, we've inherited a system that we are trying to fix, and we've already, whether it's changes,
you tried to fix it, and you were unable to. That's the point.
So whether it's changes to the universal credit, the things we're bringing with youth guarantee, we are absolutely making reforms to the welfare system, but on defence, it's clear we've got to start from capability, but we've also got to make some of the tough decisions. But unlike the last government, that is what this government is doing.
But that's what you're doing, though. You're doing this blame storm of it's the last government's fault. We all know that. The nation knows that. People listening and watching know that. So stop the blame storm and actually define what we need. What we need today is very different militarily from what we needed before, because we've seen drone warfare, we've seen cyber warfare, cyber attacks, all sorts of different things. So that means a different capability. So it means you need to recruit different people, you need to train them in different ways, and you need to provide them with different equipment. But the thing is that we could be using this also to our economic advantage, because we could and should be manufacturing this stuff in the UK, which means that we have to have better universities and stop piling, horrible debt and terrible deals on students. Get the people to study the stuff. So it's the decisions that you take now that will affect us in 10, 15, 20 years.
But that is exactly what we're doing with the defence industrial strategy. And as I talked about, that's why we've won these contracts for frigates. That's why even in the last few weeks, we've seen new contracts being put out. I don't disagree. I think it's absolutely right.
So you agree? So the voice of common sense has spoken.
Well, there you go. We can all go home at that point, but yes.
Well, let's not go home yet. We've got 40 minutes to go on the programme. Well, in my case, an hour and 40 minutes. It's 17 minutes past 8.
This is LBC.
Whether your dreams involve epic adventure, trying something you've never done before, or just some time to fully relax, you can bank on Lloyds to help make it happen. We've been asking listeners what their aspirations are for the year ahead to help create the ultimate prize packages to inspire that first step. Enter now for your chance to win one of 3 incredible experiences, thanks to Lloyds and the nation's aspirations. Choose the prize for you at lbc.co.uk.
How big's the job? Compact and nimble? That's the Vauxhall Combo. A bit of everything? Meet the award-winning Vivaro. Or is it a load-it-all job? That's Movano. Whatever the job, there's a Vauxhall van for it. Right now, during the Vauxhall Pro Days van event until the 16th of March, you can save £750 off any new Vauxhall van, electric or diesel, on top of all other offers. Search Vauxhall Van Range. Business users only, 18 plus, £750 excluding VAT. T's and C's apply. Search Vauxhall Van Range.
At TfL, we're helping make roads safer. We're continuing to roll out lower speed limits because 20 miles per hour roads have already seen 24% fewer collisions causing death or serious injury. We're also improving junctions to help keep you safe and improving visibility for our bus drivers with new wing mirror cameras. Search TfL Improvement Plan. To the Mayor of London and TfL, every journey matters. Comparison of collisions data before and after implementation of 20 miles per hour speed limit.
Leading Britain's conversation. Cross Question with Iain Dale. Alexa, send a comment to LBC.
18 minutes past 8. On the panel with me, Neil Breaker. Filmmaker Neil Breakwell. David Pinto-Dushinsky, who's Labour MP for Hendon, Sarah Bull, Conservative MP for South Northamptonshire, and broadcaster James Max. Right, let's go to another question. It's from Martin in Shropshire. Our army strength has been severely undermined over the last 14 years. I think you can go back a lot longer than 14 years. We have 900,000 NEETs on benefits. Why aren't we thinking about conscripting some of them? That'd be popular, eh, David? This would be a win-win for the UK economy and our defence. Get them in the army to defend our country. Anybody going to agree with that?
I'm scared enough without relying on some Gen Zers to get out of bed when they can't be bothered to do so far for a sort of comfy job. So, no, I don't think it would do us a great deal of help.
I think the question is not about conscription, but there are huge career opportunities actually within the armed forces itself. I've been doing the armed forces parliamentary scheme. I talked about this last year, and we've gone across spaces, and from whether it's in medical or legal or cyber or tech, it's not always about just being in khaki and fighting on the front line or flying the Typhoons or the planes. There's the legal services. So I think there are huge opportunities, and we've got to do a much better job actually of just publicising what careers are out there. So I am a big supporter of our armed forces, and it's about having this fantastic holistic approach. So from what I've seen, there are huge opportunities, and we should take it.
Sorry, please.
So I was just going to say that.
James, you know how this works. I point to somebody, and I have my back to you.
We're all among friends, though. And look, I really do agree with Sarah. The armed forces are a fantastic employer. There are huge opportunities. We've long struggled to recruit, though, and it's been one of the things that the government's had to deal with. Quite apart from the spending on equipment and stuff, it's actually turning around the recruitment crisis. But
on that point, it's not necessarily. We get the numbers through of recruitment, it's the retention piece. And that's where actually, from the scheme, that's where we're struggling, because it is about living conditions and it is other things and what the opportunities are when you can get jobs out.
And so you're not wrong that there's long been a retention problem, and that's why this government launched a whole scheme to kind of revive the kind of armed forces covenant and the offer to people. But there's long also been a recruitment problem that the last government didn't actually get the numbers through. But I think coming to the back to the questioner, the point I'd make is, look, we have the best, most professional armed forces in the world. Conscription fundamentally changes that, and you actually move away from the professional forces I think we need in today's world. And so much as it's important, that's not a route I go down.
James.
Thank you. I don't necessarily think that conscription is the answer. I think it sounds like a really good answer when you've got so many people who are not in work, not in education, not in training, and you think, right, okay, that's an answer. And you have a look at countries who do this very successfully across Europe and indeed Israel, where it is something. But I think more would have to be done in order to make sure that that's a pathway that works and doesn't create a problem for the services. What I do think is that why don't we look at the problem that we have? So we have students who are choosing whether or not to go into an apprenticeship or to take on the debt of taking on a university degree. Why don't we use this to say, if you go into the armed services and you stay within for X number of years, this is what you will get. So your education will be paid for. Your conditions will be paid for. And I think you're absolutely right to talk about, Sarah, when you say the conditions aren't right. You can't treat people in the way that you used to. You've got to look at the way that people are treated both holistically in terms of their career and progression, and also the living conditions that they have. And I know that you might get some headlines in some red top newspaper saying, "Oh, the cushy lifestyle." Well, the cushy lifestyle for the very best paid in our society, I'm sure is lovely and isn't reported because people have earned it. Let's have that respect back. Bring back all the things that we want to. And yes, we could deal with some of these people who are on benefits or otherwise, because they might be persuaded to take up the offer of higher education and or other training. But we've got to think about this in the round, not as a sort of like a rifle shot.
Okay. Right, let's move on. Let's go to David in Brighton. David, hi.
Hi, thanks, Ian. Yeah, I'm just thinking aloud about what's been a lot of talk about the existential threat from Russia and our weak security. In your first hour, our security forces are dreadful and we're vulnerable and existential threat. I mean, Russia and Trump were delighted that we Brexited. I'm just intrigued what the panel think, whether historians will look back and think, why were Trump and the Russians delighted about Brexit? If we're saying it's an existential threat, that trumps, misuse of the word, not capitalised, many of the other things that Brexiteers were obsessed about, like making our own decisions, and whether we would be in a stronger position now in dealing with this alleged existential threat without Brexit.
Okay, let's put that to Neil.
Well, I certainly think that the reason why Trump was pleased that we Brexit is because he's interested in spheres of influence, and any way of breaking up power blocks is a good thing for as far as Trump is concerned. So he was quite happy for us to move away from Europe. I'm not sure it makes a huge difference, to be honest, because we can still act independently, and actually we're sort of aligned with, Trump actually accused Britain of being aligned with Spain in terms of its position on whether it engaged with or supported America's attack on Iran. So I'm not altogether sure that the fact that we've Brexited makes a big difference to the sort of geopolitical positioning of whether you're in favour of a war or not.
James?
I don't think it makes a difference at all. I think if you think that Brexit has got an impact on this, you've been listening to James O'Brien too much, and you've been drinking the Kool-Aid. And
you can never listen to James O'Brien too much.
No. Listen, a fantastic professional and a wonderful listen. But I think that the issue about trying to bring things back to Brexit in the same way that as soon as anybody mentions Nazis, you've lost the argument, because I think we live in a very different world. Things have changed, and actually international relationships can be built very successfully without having necessarily the ties that we had before, or indeed the constraints before. Because if we had remained in the European Union, we always were the pebble in the shoe. We were always the difficult one. We were always the one who didn't necessarily agree with certain things and dragging our feet on certain decisions. Whereas now we can be independent, we can align ourselves, we can have much better and easier conversations. So I don't think we should look at our issues and our problems in the context of Brexit. I don't think it makes a scrap of difference.
Sarah?
No, I agree. I don't think it's related to Brexit. I think we will always stand up for our allies wherever they are across Europe, and I don't think it needs to be an issue about Brexit. I think what's more fundamentally worrying is the lack of leadership that we are having in the country at this moment in time, because Keir needs to be coming out and being much more definitive than he has been. He does it domestically with his U-turns left, right and centre, but it's even more damaging when you're starting to do this internationally. If you don't show strength, and Russia responds to strength, as does China, as do any of these dictatorships, this is where we then put ourselves in a vulnerable position. And I feel at the moment sort of Keir's like, he bobs around like a cork in water at the moment and things, and he just sees where he washes up and then he pulls back again, like with the tide. He needs to be much more definitive. That will be the thing that has the impact on our remarkings in the world stage any more than Brexit.
David?
Sorry, so look, I mean, obviously I'm going to disagree with what Sarah says.
Let's take that as read. Let's stick to the question.
But no. But look, I think it's, for me, what's really important is that I think we all recognise that the context of the world has changed. It is a more dangerous and more uncertain place. And that means that our need for close alliances has gone up, not down. And I think what we've seen from this government and from Keir is actually leadership on the world stage in forging those agreements, in actually bringing us closer to Europe in the security sphere, as well as maintaining a strong relationship with the US. It's not an either or, it's a both and.
But do you think Brexit has impacted this?
So I think the manner in which the last government damaged some of our conversations and our relationships with our European allies across the board did have an impact on our ability to build close security relationships, and that's absolutely what we've been focused on, kind of repairing it.
AUKUS happened under the last government, didn't it?
But that's not about Europe.
Well, it kind of is, because the French were furious.
Well, yes, but that's between Australia, the US, and Britain. But as I say, look, what we've seen is a Prime Minister who, whether it's trade deals, whether it's security deals, has actually been re-establishing Britain on the world stage, striking deals that the last government couldn't, and actually building that platform. So when you look at, for instance, the coalition of the willing in Ukraine, that's something that Keir has helped bring together and catalyse.
Yes, but Boris Johnson, I mean, whatever you think of Boris Johnson, I mean, I think that was his defining achievement as Prime Minister. He led Europe on the response to Ukraine, didn't he? So that Brexit didn't actually impact his ability to do that.
No, and as I've said, look, I mean, I think obviously it frayed some relationships, but I don't think Brexit's at the heart of this discussion. But I think the key discussion is how do we forge alliances from here to create the right, the best possible security architecture to keep Britain safe in what's a much more dangerous world. So you talk about
forging those alliances, but how's Keir doing with that? I mean, he's ruined the relationship with the United States.
No, he hasn't.
Well, Donald Trump has had a bit of to
No,
that.
of course he has.
No, he hasn't.
But the thing is that if Keir Starmer had really built on the progress that he made, there's no doubt that he made fantastic progress, but he didn't stay in touch. It's a little bit like being that plate's spinning, and he forgot that plate was spinning, and then he completely left it behind, and he didn't communicate. Because if he had had a better relationship with the President of the United States, he would have had more conversations on the way in, and he would have known what was coming down the pipes.
Sorry, but look, we have, it's exactly because Keir has built a strong relationship with the US administration that we got the best of its kind trade deal, that we've seen all kinds of other advantages.
But not anymore, and that's the point.
And the reality is it's exactly because we have that strong relationship, both with the US and Europe, but with the US, that we can also stand up for our own national interest.
As being an irrelevance, because he's not making any decisions. He's sticking on the fence, getting splinters.
He's not sitting on the fence. He's making decisions.
Sorry, you were at Prime Minister's Question Time today.
No, absolutely, and he was really clear.
I was nearly calling up 999 to take him to A&E to get those splinters removed. The poor man.
That's simply nonsense.
He was in pain.
I'm going to have to watch this back because I missed it today.
But he was not definitive at all, and I think that's the problem. He approaches it with a very legal mind, and he wants to have a yes and a no answer, and he wants to prosecute it like a lawyer would do. And I was a lawyer, so I can say these sort of things. I can see the signs. But what he has to do as a leader is then be definitive. This is a very grey zone, and you have to act quickly and in a very kinetic area. You have to be decisive.
But he has been definitive.
Well, no, because when he has done these negotiations, our fishing rights have gone. Those French have got better fishing rights than we have. That was supposed to be in return for safe funding, and that hasn't happened. So when Keir goes out and negotiates, like he went off to China, all of a sudden, what did he come back with? We've granted an embassy. We've got a spy case now erupting in your party, and we're no better off. And then we've gone and damaged our relationship. At the end of the day, our troops, we need to have...
And Gibraltar's on the way out too.
Oh, don't start. Right, let's move on because we need to go to the news headlines at 8:30 on LBC with Darryl Jackson.
Downing Street's insisting the UK has significant defence capabilities in the Middle East after the announcement HMS Dragon won't sail for Cyprus until next week. It needs to be brought out of maintenance and fitted with the right weapons. On day 5 of the conflict, the MOD says Wildcat helicopters with anti-drone capabilities will arrive this week. A US submarine has struck an Iranian warship in the Indian Ocean with at least 80 casualties. The White House says 49 and counting Iranian leaders have been wiped off the face of the earth. And experts have warned household energy bills are forecast to rise by 10% from July. It follows increases in wholesale gas prices due to the conflict in the Middle East. LBC weather cloudy across Scotland and Northern Ireland, turning wet. Dry elsewhere with some patchy low cloud. A milder night for most, lows of 5 degrees.
Hear every side of the story. This is LBC.
Hey, Harry. Hello, mate. Got any tips? Sometimes, pal, your best bet is not to bet at all. And BetVictor's app makes it really easy, simple and safe to do so. They've got lots of helpful features to help you manage your time and your spend online. But it also really helps that I can't find my blooming phone half the time. Yeah, that does really help. I don't even know where it is now. I can hear it, but I can't see it. Sandra?
Listen to Harry, and please gamble responsibly. 18+ gambleaware.org.
It took me less than 30 seconds to request my repeat prescription on the NHS app.
That's quicker than making this brew.
And I saved time by not ringing the GP practice.
When?
Plus, with notifications turned on, I know as soon as I get a new message.
Big win.
So there's more time for this tea break.
So did you go to that restaurant? We're delivering an NHS fit for the future. Request repeat prescriptions and turn on notifications to never miss a message. Tap the NHS app.
And now your travel news. It's starting to look a bit congested on the A4872 southbound. We're hearing reports people are slowing down to look at the Volkswagen Transporter sales event. Apparently you can get £1,500 off any new Transporter. That's any variant, any trim, and any colour until the 31st of March. Now that's a deal worth queuing for. Search VW Transporter offers. UK retail customers 18+. Discount applies to price of all new Transporters ordered by 31st of March and delivered by 30th of June.
Cross Question with Iain Dale on LBC. Call 0345 6060 973.
8:33. This is a much more polite version of Cross Question than we had last night, can I say. We have Neil Breakwell with us, filmmaker, former deputy editor of BBC Newsnight. David Pinto-Dushinsky, Labour MP for Hendon. Sarah Ball is Conservative MP for South Northamptonshire. The reincarnation of Andrea Leadsom, I like to call you. And James Max, broadcaster and columnist for the Financial Times, president of the Royal Albert Hall, and we feel we've disinterred a former LBC presenter for that.
There we go.
Right.
It's a rare breed that allowed back in the building.
Quite. Let's have a text question from Martha, who says, MPs have been dancing with people from Strictly as the world descends into crisis. Is this proof they have no grip on reality? Now, more than 40 MPs, including the House of Commons Speaker, Sir Lindsay Hoyle, took part in a group dance lesson in offices across the road from Parliament in Portcullis House, led by former Strictly Come Dancing contestants, the broadcaster Angela Rippon and actress Alex Kingston. I did ask our two MPs if they took part in this today, but they didn't. Would you have liked to, Sarah?
Well, look, the reason behind this, and this had been arranged for many weeks, so I wasn't there, but it is actually World Obesity Day. So what they were trying to do is raise awareness about the importance of being active and being fit, and obviously Strictly and dancing, whether it's Latin ballroom, is a great way to get fit. And when I got diagnosed type 1 diabetic, actually that's something I took up. I haven't been able to do it as much since being an MP, and I'd love to get back to it. So I think the purpose behind it was actually just to raise awareness, and we often try different ways. So I think it's slightly unfair, I think, on this is to say that the way it's gone across the media is that, we're all out of touch with reality and we're dancing while we're at war. That was not the intention behind it. I think the cause behind it was very important, and I don't think that we have to stop everything at this point. And I think it's a little bit unfair the way that this is being presented,
David?
if I'm honest.
So again, I'm afraid we're going to continue this trend of this being a very polite panel, because I agree with Sarah.
You haven't noticed these two yet.
Look, I mean, I am a terrible dancer, so I would have never, participated, because it would have not ended well. But as a serious point, look, we know that social media can sometimes amp these things up. I think, as Sarah says, it's a bit unfair. And this is, look, I mean, parliamentarians have been, we've been in debates for days on the incredibly serious stuff happening around the world. We take it unbelievably seriously, and that goes across parties, I think. And so, I may disagree with my colleagues, but I don't doubt their seriousness. And I think this is a bit of a storm in the teacup.
James?
As somebody who's involved in the arts, I would actually encourage, whether it's dancing or music, and to forget that at a time when things really are very dark is actually the last thing that we should be doing. However, at the risk of upsetting everybody who's involved in politics, I don't think we should be looking about outside the Houses of Parliament as to whether they're lacking a grip on reality, and we should be looking at what they were saying. So yesterday, the spring statement, frankly, we should have had a Chancellor who was bold enough to say that the calculations that we've done are completely off.
Hang on, this has got nothing to do with the question.
No, it has, absolutely, because you're asking whether or not people, our MPs have a grip on reality. And what I'm saying is, look, dancing outside, fine, it's got a message, and actually these things are really important in our lives. What's being said in the Houses of Parliament doesn't have a grip on reality. That's what I'm worried about, because you've got a spring statement that was made that isn't worth the paper it's written on, because it's wrong. Why is it wrong? Because bond rates are not where they estimated, inflation is probably going to go up because of fuel prices, all of these things, and you've got MPs talking as if nothing's happening and that we can rely on these figures, we can rely on these growth estimates. They're going to be wrong. I would much rather that the Chancellor of the Exchequer had put in a note saying what has happened is unprecedented. We've had 4 days of this war at the time. We should be putting this off. We should be coming back to you when we've got some proper numbers and really talk about the reality and really talk about the policies that are going to make a difference to people's lives. And things like dancing and art and all these other things are actually really important, and they should probably do more of it and less talking nonsense in the House.
Neil, follow that.
I will. Look, I suppose, they were dancing. Do people care? I think the fact that some people do care tells us that that's a symptom of fury at the MPs are somehow not necessarily whether they're sort of gripping reality, but just not understanding other people's problems. And so they see the dancing and they use that to project bigger frustrations with Parliament not working for them, not delivering on things. I suspect if there is, I don't know, have people been very cross about seeing these images of people dancing? Maybe, and if they have, I think it's.
My colleague Tom Swarbrick was very vexed earlier on.
Well, so I think it's. But what is he vexed? Is he actually vexed about that incident, or is he thinking that it's a symbolic image of what they feel MPs are unable to do, which is to improve and change their lives? That's probably what drives it.
But that's why what happens in the House is so important.
Yeah, and
when there is a lack of a grip of reality there, I think that's the problem, is that people up and down the country are upset with politicians and politics because it's not delivering.
Talking of grip on reality, let's have a follow-up question from Jim in Lincoln. You two are going to feel really got at now. MPs will be receiving an inflation-busting pay rise of 5% in April, which includes a 3.5% cost of living increase. How very kind. This isn't just a 5% pay rise either. A 5% rise on salary that is already over £90,000 per year is a substantial increase. I was told my pay rise of 3.6% was more than adequate, as it was in line with inflation. How can MPs keep expecting the public to make tougher decisions and keep coming back for more and more taxes when at the same time significantly increasing their already generous salaries? Now, Jim, to be fair, it's not MPs that make the decision on their own pay rises. It's an independent body which does that. So you're being, personally, I think you're being slightly unfair. Neil, let's start with you.
Yeah, what can they do, really, if it's an independent body? It seems to me that they've got to just decide that MPs and politicians, certainly in cabinet and ministers, just ought to be paid more anyway. It's sort of it would do better to improve the attraction of politics to more people. I don't think for the responsibilities that they have, it's a ridiculous salary. But clearly, when they keep getting these inflation rises to their pay, which sits completely counter to most, apart from perhaps nurses. It doesn't sit well with the public, so it's daft. So if your point is to represent the people and make them feel comfortable, this independent body is not doing you any favours. So find an alternative.
David?
Well, look, I mean, as a, to reflect your point, it is an independent body, but you're absolutely right. MPs need to be focused on what people
You don't have to take the money. Is that right? You can refuse the pay. Is that true?
So I don't know.
Would you refuse it if you?
Look, I'm not going to get into.
Oh, why
that
not?
Here. No, I'm not going to get it.
Why? Because it's permanent, isn't it? You're being offered a 5% pay rise.
I'm not live on. I'm not live on the air going to talk about that. What I can talk about is the broad.
Why not?
Broad principle.
Well, you're an MP who's being offered a rise of 5%. Would you take it?
Yes, I think I would.
Why?
Because that's what's been agreed by the independent commission, and I think that is why we set these up. But the point, I think the point everyone's focusing on is that MPs shouldn't be celebrating more in kind of the money where other people are struggling.
Why shouldn't he take it?
Yeah. I'm not saying he shouldn't.
I'm just sort of going against what you said before. When you think they're underpaid,
I'm not.
You're having a go at him for saying he's going to take it.
But if he thinks that the system needs to change and it's uncomfortable having this 5%, then just counter that by saying you won't take the increase.
But I think it's back to your point that you made at the very beginning, and this is my thing. We're approaching it as though, and it's always as though all MPs are out to get something, and that we're not trying to work, and that there's this perception we want to encourage more people into politics, and all of this environment of it always setting us up, like both of us, as though we're terrible people. We went into it for public service. If I'm being honest, I took a pay cut to come into this, and I did it because I saw the value in being an MP and what you can achieve. There's a lot that people don't see that we do, and rightly so. There's a lot of select committees, meetings on different issues. We really work very hard in different ways. Now, that's not taking it away, but we don't go to footballers and say, well, we're going to take away, you pay it back, pay it forward. We don't go to our doctors or nurses or police or anything else like that. And I think I would rather us actually just focus on trying to make the system more encouraging for people to come in rather than always vilifying us, whether that's because we've danced or what we're being paid or how we're acting. I mean, we need quality people to come into Parliament, and I think this setting it up like this just doesn't do any favours.
James, briefly, if you can.
Yeah, so I would say I don't think we pay our MPs enough. I would also say that the way that we have conversations in this country about how much people are paid is appalling, that we take people to trial over it. But I do think that we need to have a different way of pay and reward on the basis of experience or otherwise, because there's no reason why somebody who comes into Parliament straight from maybe school or very young and has less experience than somebody who has perhaps been working a career elsewhere. We need to find ways in which we can calibrate to make sure that we get the best, and we also need to detoxify conversations about pay, reward, remuneration, which we need to also do within the tax system. But it's been driven by politics and politicians who have not allowed us to have proper conversations about what people are paid and what pay and reward means, and then how you then pay back into the system. We've made it very toxic up and down. It means that we've now got green-eyed monsters looking up and down saying, oh, it's too much, oh, I'm paying too much tax, thinking that they are paying your salary. We've become toxic about it.
Talking of green-eyed monsters, let's take a text question from Ricky, and I really want 30 seconds from each of you on this. Are the Lib Dems, they're the green-eyed monsters, right to say all the Brits who've gone to live in Dubai who want to be rescued from the war should pay for the privilege? James?
I don't think the Lib Dems are right. I would much prefer it if somebody asked the question, well, why did they go in there in the first place? Because I'd much rather them to be here. And we have vilified, and it started under the Conservatives and it's been completed under Labour, that we've played this game of saying that people who earn a lot of money need to be targeted, that we don't want to have people rewarded for their success, and we're going to take more from you because it's convenient to do so, either for their political narrative or anything else. So I would say we should be turning the question. That's the symptom, not the cause. Let's look at the cause. Why did they go in the first place?
Sarah?
I agree on what James has just said here. I think the important thing is that they're British citizens and there is a value to British citizenship, which means we will get you back and we will get you back safely. And I just think, exactly as was said, we need to be much more pro-business and we need to question the reasons why people have left in the first place. We need to create that environment. It's not being created at the moment, but we've got to get them back.
David?
Well, look, the first thing is, on a factual point, I believe actually people who take these flights do actually pay for them or are asked for contributions. But I think the broader point is, look, the first duty of any government is to protect British citizens. And so I think, and that's really what I'm focused on. I think, of course, there's a broader conversation about contribution, etc. But I think right now, during this crisis, my focus is on protecting British citizens and getting those who want to get home.
Neil?
Yeah, of all the questions for Ed Davey to get involved in, it seems a bit off, really. There's some bigger questions he could tackle. I'm surprised he wasn't at the Strictly Dancing, actually.
And how dare we call Rio Ferdinand a washed-up footballer?
Right. Is he not?
I mean, Isabel Oakeshott, fair enough.
Yeah. No, it's. I don't think it's the right time to sort of calling about it. But there is a big problem with people leaving the country. There's probably too many of them, and maybe there needs to be some sort of American-style global tax where you actually.
Oh my God! Don't go down that road. That way lies madness. Right, we will move on to some other subjects in just a moment, and we'll have our long-awaited fun question at the end of the programme. It's 8:46.
On the latest episode of The Newsagents.
Keir Starmer might not be Winston Churchill, but is Donald Trump Dwight D. Eisenhower? Because frankly, the planning and the explanations for the action in Iran have been contradictory and slightly woeful.
Get the latest episode of The Newsagents with Emily Maitlis, John Sopel and Lewis Goodall. Listen or watch on our free Global Player app or the LBC app.
And now your travel news. It's starting to look a bit congested on the A4872 southbound. We're hearing reports people are slowing down to look at the Volkswagen Transporter sales event. Apparently you can get £1,500 off any new Transporter. That's any variant, any trim, and any colour until the 31st of March. Now that's a deal worth queuing for. Search VW Transporter offers. UK retail customers 18 plus. Discount applies to price of all new Transporters ordered by 31st of March and delivered by 30th of June.
Hi, I'm looking for a pair of jeans.
Right. Low slung, slouchy, wide leg, barrel leg, curved leg, flared, straight or skinny.
Blue?
Fashion. It's hard to keep on top of. Other things, like the upcoming changes to renting, are a bit easier. As a landlord, you will need to get on top of these important changes. They will affect how you manage your tenancies. Act now. Read the guidance at gov.uk/renting is changing.
When you're smiling. Banning Dental Group clinics with over 5,000 top-rated Google reviews. keep on smiling.
A southern train is a place where you can just switch off. Where you have the chance to scroll your feeds as you roll past fields, or simply relax with a podcast, playlist, or power nap. Go with your flow and save with advance tickets at southernrailway.com. Terms apply.
Tuesday night on the sofa, watching telly with Mum again.
Male hawkers stay with the mothers for life.
This is the moment Stephen chose to speak to Barclays about Mortgage Boost, so he could borrow more with help from family or friends. We're helping first-time buyers get on the property ladder sooner. Search Barclays Mortgages. Barclays, backing your future.
Your home may be repossessed if you do not keep up repayments on your mortgage. Subject to application, financial circumstances and borrowing history. T's and C's apply.
Cross Question with Iain Dale on LBC.
8:48, Neil Breakwell, David Pinto-Dushinsky, Sarah Ball and James Max with us. WhatsApp question from Nikki in Kent. Given that Donald Trump has publicly insulted our Prime Minister and British soldiers in Afghanistan and repeatedly involved himself in UK political matters, does the panel believe it would be appropriate for the British royal family to attend the it would not be appropriate, I think they mean, Nikki means, to attend the forthcoming 250th anniversary celebrations for the United States. David?
Look, the special relationship is more than one person. We have bonds of history, of shared values, of common security going back with the US all the way. And I think it's absolutely right that as, one of our, our absolutely pivotal ally, that we absolutely participate. And so, no, I think it's right that the royal family attend, exactly because it's not about any one person, it's about our two countries.
Goodness knows why we should celebrate American independence, given that it was from us, but there we are. Neil?
Yeah, they should go, because it would look damn petty and cause a huge noise if we didn't. But I mean, just go there and just scrub that special word out of the relationship. It's so unnecessary now. It just doesn't help. And the reason is that I have a special relationship with my other half, right? And with fine whiskey, and it's because it's dependable, it's reliable. You know what you're going to get. And
fine whiskey, especially.
Yeah. So, but I just know.
I hope your other half is not listening.
Unlikely now. But that's the point of a special relationship. You sort of know you know what to expect. You know what we can't do that with the least predictable leader of that country at the moment. So it just doesn't seem bear scrutiny to keep calling it a special relationship. We have a relationship. It's definitely an important relationship, but I don't see what's special about it with regards us compared to any other country or the treatment of us.
James?
I think the word special is something that we Brits have always used and the Americans never have. What we do have and what we do know is that the royal family is special and something that we have and they don't. And if anybody can fix any kind of relationship issues, and we know that, one can make the political point scorings about Keir Starmer, but we know that Margaret Thatcher famously had a bit of a falling out with Ronald Reagan at one stage, that, various points in the relationship, it doesn't necessarily go right at all times. I've read your book. So, these are the points that where something has gone wrong, what is the best opportunity to fix it? I think the royal family is it, and I think that we absolutely should attend those forthcoming celebrations and make every opportunity to fix what's broken and move it forward.
Do you know what tomorrow is?
Tomorrow?
Apart from being Thursday.
Thursday all day. Go on.
Anyone?
80th anniversary of Churchill.
Yes, of course
you win the prize.
I've read it in your blog and I forgot. You've mentioned it.
It is the 80th anniversary of the first mention of this phrase by Sir Winston Churchill at the Missouri speech, Fulton, Missouri speech, where he also coined the phrase the Iron Curtain. So he's doing quite well on the rhetoric that day. Sarah?
No, I definitely think that they should still go. And I think that we have a shared history, whether that was that they broke away from us all those years ago. But we do have a shared history. And from my side, actually, George Washington's ancestors, they had their ancestral home. It's called Selgrave manner in my constituency. And actually, we are celebrating the relationship that we have, and to the point where actually some Selgrave soil has been taken, and it's going to be in a monument underneath the Washington Memorial. They're going to actually bury a time capsule with it in. And so I just think, it's very important that we go beyond this and keep building that relationship.
So if you were a Liberal Democrat MP, Sarah, you would have said, in my constituency of South Northamptonshire.
Sorry, well, yes, I know, South Northamptonshire. I always get the plug in. A lot of people now said, you got South and North, is that not Hamptonshire? I get everyone.
Right, let's move on to a text question from Christine. Nigel Farage says police should patrol polling stations on election days to stop people controlling how relatives, etc., cast their votes. Is he right? Now, the Reform UK leader is claiming that so-called family voting was the reason behind the defeat of his party's candidate in last week's Gorton and Denton by-election. The election observers group Democracy Volunteers has claimed to have witnessed 32 incidents of family voting across 15 of the 22 polling stations it observed in Gorton and Denton. How big an issue is this, and does it happen? David?
Well, look, obviously, any kind of reports of family voting are concerning, and they are for the Electoral Commission to investigate. But
it's breaking the law, isn't it? So surely it is for the police to.
Well, and so the Electoral Commission has authority over that. They will be liaising with the returning officers. As politicians, we're not kind of involved in that, and it's for them to make any inquiries.
But
have
you seen it happening?
No, I haven't. But look, I think the broader thing, of course, we need to protect the integrity of the ballot. And that's why, for instance, just this week, I think it's just this week on Monday, we were bringing the elections bill exactly to strengthen the integrity of our democratic processes. I think separately, the idea of kind of police. I'm not going to go into that. I am concerned that you don't want to have an intimidating environment either. But what I'm also concerned about is that I think we've seen some pretty bad losing from Nigel Farage and Matt Goodwin. And one of the key parts of the integrity of our democratic process is accepting results. And I think that's really important. And I think it's bad that people are importing bad habits from other countries that undermine the integrity of that most central part of our democratic process.
And Sarah, this practice is not particularly new, is it? I mean, if you go back through the sort of into the last century, early part of the last century, you would have had husbands telling their wives how to vote, and the wives would have been quite content to be told how to vote. So it's a similar thing, isn't it?
Yeah, you still see it. I mean, unfortunately, I've had it on a few doorsteps where I've asked.
Doesn't it get to you?
Yes, and they're sort of saying, "Well, let me see what my husband says," and I'm like, "No, you've got independent thoughts, standing up for ladies here." But I think the key thing is, I don't want to see police at the polling stations. There are enough reasons for people. I was speaking to a young group when I stood in Vauxhall in 2019, and they said they want to vote, but actually being seen at the polling station is enough to put them off because what that would do to reputation. I don't want to put anything else that puts a barrier for people to get involved in democracy. However, I do think that there has to be a full investigation into what has happened, if it is, because the elections have to be held properly and correctly. But I don't think that having the police at the polling station is the right approach for us.
I mean, it is simple. If this happens to any degree, surely the returning officers at the individual polling stations, it's up to them to say, no, you can't have two people in a ballot booth.
And I think that's what some of them have said online. They've said, look, it's either, they were implicit what was going on, because there's usually quite strict rules. Yeah. You can maybe have assistance if, for example, your site is a problem or something like that. But no, absolutely, we shouldn't be seeing that.
Okay, James.
I'm not sure that this is necessarily the reason why Reform didn't win that particular by-election.
Well, they were 12% behind the Greens.
So I think the difference is there. I think if this is a problem, we need to look into the processes at polling stations as opposed to having police. I don't think that's going to solve the problem. So I think there are already methods in place where, for example, as you say, an individual goes into the polling booth alone, and I think the rules need to be perhaps clearer. And yes, an investigation, whatever, to make sure it's clean. We need to make sure that our politics and our voting is absolutely clear and the process is run properly. Police is not the answer. I think they've got other things to do.
Neil, if you were still Deputy Editor of Newsnight, would you be launching a big investigation into this?
No. I don't think so. I don't think it's the breaking point of our democracy now. I mean, and surely the police have got better things to be doing with their patrolling than around polling booths. And if 20-odd% are postal votes now, it's not going to really solve that problem. And I think what Nigel Farage likes doing is, and he's very effective at, having just made a programme about him, is that he knows how to make noise. This is a headline to get into the bigger question that he wants to get into about why people vote in certain ways. But communities have always followed, families have voted in similar patterns. That's not too unusual. Clearly, if there's crimes being committed at polling stations, that should be fixed, but I reckon it could be fixed by returning officers.
Right, let's go to our fun question. This is from Polly. After the MPs did dancing, which famous person would you want to dance with? Strange question, but James.
I thought you'd come to me first. Setting aside, the opportunity to go for the biggest pop star in the world right now, Harry Styles, I'd probably go.
I've already bagged, so you have to.
No,
someone else.
I was going to say there's a vision for us all.
Wow. No, I'd probably go Joanna Lumley, because I met her at a cocktail party not so long ago, and she was absolutely fascinating. And I think one of the great things about dancing is the conversations that you have whilst you're dancing really badly. And if you've got somebody who's very interesting with you and got lots of stories to tell, you can distract from how bad your dancing is. So I'll go Joanna.
Are those the kind of parties you get to if you're president of the Royal Albert Hall?
Yes, Ian.
Well, when I finish here, I'll succeed you.
I'm
Neil.
not sure you could.
Neil.
Yeah, Harry Styles, for reasons I can't explain.
Wow.
We could all...
You can guess.
We could probably guess, but probably...
Is it just sort of like a full Harry Styles, his album comes out on Friday, big him up?
Does it?
Yeah.
You're so in touch with popular culture.
I am
you are
indeed.
down with the kids.
Right, Sarah.
Well, I need to be.
Well, aside from like a historical figure like Fred Astaire or someone that I'd like to dance with Nikita off Strictly Come Dancing. He's a type 1, I'm a type 1. I think a great example of showing
so
that...
are type 1s attracted to each other then? Is that what you're saying?
Well, it's that sweetness, isn't it? No. It's
such a shame I'm a type 2.
Well, I know, otherwise we could have danced around ourselves. I think it's just more to show as a message to people. I think he's been brilliant on Strictly because he wears his tech on display and showing that you don't, with any of these...
So he wears his what on display?
Technology. He has a sensor, and it's just helped to break down stigma around like type 1 and diabetes and have that conversation. So I'd love to do it to show man and a woman, we can do anything and be anyone we want to be.
Now, David, you've already said you wouldn't embarrass yourself by dancing, but in the possibility that you did have to dance.
No, and so this is precisely the point. Look, I am an appalling dancer, and if my daughter was here, she'd be saying, "And for the love of God, don't do dad dancing," which is the only kind of dancing I can do. So, acknowledging my human frailties in this regard, I'm not sure I'd dance with someone, but I do have someone I would want to admire and learn from, which is John Sargent, because he got all the way through Strictly, and he is my dancing role.
So basically, instead of dancing with somebody, you want to dance on somebody.
Well, almost, but yes.
Right, thank you all very much for joining us on the panel tonight. On tomorrow's panel, we'll be focusing exclusively on the conflict in the Middle East, and I'll be joined by former Conservative Middle East Minister Lord Tariq Ahmad, Labour MP and Foreign Affairs Committee member, and also Royal Marines veteran Alex Ballinger, and international security expert Elizabeth Braw, and the UK director of the campaigning group Human Rights Watch, Yasmin Ahmed. Isn't that too many people? I'm not sure. Anyway, I'm sure it'll all be fine tomorrow night. So thank you all very much. And if you missed tonight's episode of Cross Question or any of it, you can catch up, of course, on Global Player. Now, in the next hour, we're going to turn our attention back to the conflict in the Middle East, but focus on the responses it's drawing here in the UK. And there's been a very predictable phenomenon from some people on the left here in Britain. They've been telling Iranians who are happy that Trump has gone to war with the evil regime in Tehran that they're wrong to be celebrating the death of the Ayatollah and to be thanking Trump for making it happen. There was even a march here in London last weekend with this message. Jeremy Corbyn turned up to it, as did the Green Party's deputy leader, Muhsin Ali. But what's inspiring this mindset? These are British citizens supporting the Iranian regime. Is it because Israel is involved and Donald Trump? It's as simple as that, isn't it?
On your radio, on the LBC app, and...
Play LBC.
Leading Britain's conversation. This is LBC.
From Global's newsroom, the Armed Forces Ministers told LBC a British warship hasn't set off for the Eastern Mediterranean yet because it needs to be refit with different types of weapons. It'll then take 5 or 6 days to reach a British military base on Cyprus targeted by drones. Al Khan says they're working as quickly as possible to get HMS Dragon ready.
To refit that system with different types of weapons while we're doing maintenance on it, weapons and welding don't often go well together, takes some time. So we're working as fast as we possibly can. We've reduced the timeline significantly to get that asset rolling.
He also told LBC threats are being tracked, identified and shot down around an RAF base in Cyprus and beyond, even in the absence of HMS Dragon. On day 5 of the war, Israel says it struck a compound housing Iran's security HQ in Tehran. America says it sunk an Iranian warship in the Indian Ocean. Sri Lanka says at least 80 crew are dead. Well, speaking this evening, the US President Donald Trump said they're doing very well on the war front.
Somebody said, on a scale of 10, where would you rate it? I said about a 15. We're going to continue to do well. We have the greatest military in the world by far. That was a tremendous threat to us for many years. 47 years they've been killing our people and killing people from all over the world. And I think we have great support. And I think if we didn't do it first, they would have done it to Israel and give us a shot if that was possible.
Well, the government's first chartered flight to bring stranded Britons home is expected to leave Oman this evening. Here, the Iranian ambassador to London's also been summoned by the UK government. And Turkey claims a ballistic missile headed for its airspace has been shot down. In other news, a partner of a Scottish Labour MP is one of 3 people arrested on suspicion of spying for China. Joni Reid says she has never seen anything to make her suspect David Taylor. And the Water Minister says it's abhorrent that hundreds of people in a Devon community were made ill by South West Water. It's admitted its supplies contained a parasite in Brixham in 2024. It's facing a fine. In the city, the FTSE 100's closed up 83 points at 10,567. The pound buys $1.34 and €1.15. LBC weather, cloudy across Scotland and Northern Ireland tonight, turning wet. Dry elsewhere with patchy low cloud. A mild night for most, a low of 5 degrees. From Global's newsroom for LBC, I'm Daryl Jackson.
This is LBC from Global, leading Britain's conversation with Iain Dale.
Hello, a very good evening. It's 9:05 on LBC. I want to turn our attention to a subject which has been increasingly vexing me over the past few days. It's not the first time this has happened, but I don't understand why predominantly people on the left or hard left of our society seem to be siding with the Iranian regime in this dispute. Now, you can have your own views about whether it's right under international law. You can have views. It doesn't matter whether you're on the right or the left on this. Everyone's entitled to a point of view. But there does seem to be an automatic knee-jerk reaction from some people. If Trump is involved or if Israel is involved, then we will side with whoever they are against. I think that is crass. In many ways, it's wicked. And I don't know what drives people to come to the conclusion that they should automatically side with anything that is against Israel or Trump. I mean, we've heard the expression Trump derangement syndrome. We've heard the, I suppose you could say, Israel derangement syndrome as well. But no matter what you think of Trump or what you think of the state of Israel, surely we should all welcome the fact that people who have led this murderous regime in Iran are no longer with us. About 49 of the leadership were killed in the strikes last Friday. Now, I mean, in theory, we shouldn't rejoice about anyone who's been killed. But I think given that these are people that have killed hundreds of thousands of their own citizens, 40 to 50,000 of the people who were protesting in the first few weeks of January were killed by this brutal regime. Gay people are killed for just being gay. You've had women who've been killed just because they've worn the wrong thing. And yet you have some left-wing feminist groups siding with the Ayatollahs. I mean, explain that one to me. I really don't get it. And if, like me, you are quite an addict of watching Instagram reels, like when you're on the train or got nothing better to do, I mean, my Instagram feed has been riddled with videos, short 2-minute videos from Iranians, generally, obviously, expats, people who live in this country, Europe, the United States, who have either fled Iran because of that regime, or they've been born here because their parents have fled. And the message has been in every single one that I've seen, and you may think, well, that's because of your algorithm, Ian, well, maybe you're right. But every single one that I've seen is saying, look, you liberals, you do-gooding liberals, you think that you're acting properly here because you're against Trump and Israel. But let us tell you, Iranians don't agree with you. We want to thank Donald Trump. We want to thank Benjamin Netanyahu for what they've done because it gives us the prospect of getting our country back. Should we not pay attention to the message that Iranians are sending us, just like it was in Venezuela, where we had everyone say, oh, this is terrible by Trump. He shouldn't have done what he did to Maduro. And yet 99.9% of Venezuelans think, thank you very much, Donald Trump, for what you've done. Should we not bear in mind the beliefs, the views of the people who are directly affected by this, rather than us getting on our high horses and looking down our nose and saying, oh, it's terrible, Donald Trump has done something that we think might be against international law? 0345 6060 973. Well, this clip has been shared on Instagram. The woman you're about to hear from is Iranian herself, and she's reading the words of another Iranian woman from Tehran.
I am an Iranian who lives in Tehran, and I can hear the sound of bombing outside. In case I'm dead tomorrow, I just want you to remember this. Please, shut the up and don't use me against America or Israel to try and convince them to stop. We ask for this. We want this attack. And I know that you don't want to listen to us. You don't want to listen, but I'm going to give you the shorter version of why we want this. The reason is we had one option, to go and protest this bloody regime, and we did, and they killed 40,000 of us in 2 days. This is the last option we have. We ask for the help, and the help is here. And I know I might die, and I don't care, because I'm willing to sacrifice my life for Iran. And you just shut the up and don't use me to attack anyone or try to stop this. We want this. You don't understand. You're not in our shoes. So shut the up.
Well, a fairly blunt message there, it has to be said, but you can understand where that comes from, that people like that lady are very, very frustrated at some of the reactions they're hearing from in Western democracies. And we enjoy living in a democracy. I'm not sure that the result of this will be that Iran ends up as a democracy. But it can't end up with a worse regime than they've got at the moment, can it? Now, one of the reasons I think people are so ignorant in saying some of these things and siding with the Iranian regime is because they have no understanding of the history of Iran. Well, I know a man who does, and he's about to join us, Professor Ali Ansari, who's Professor of Iranian History at the University of St Andrews and the Director of its Institute for Iranian Studies. And he's also the author of books including Iran, Islam and Democracy, The Politics of Managing Change. Ali, thank you very much for joining us this evening. Now, it's an impossible task to sum up Iranian Persian history over the last sort of millennium, I suppose, but I'm going to have to ask you to try. How have we got to where we are in terms of the state of Iran? How has it got to the point that we have this theocracy in charge? Because it wasn't always like that, was it?
No, not at all. I mean, and thanks for having me on. I mean, Iran's had two revolutions in the 20th century. The first one was a constitutional revolution in 1906, and it basically set the template for parliamentary sort of democracy in Iran for the rest of the century. Not that it was actually implemented very well. There were always problems with it. The monarchy that followed in the 1920s and through to 1979 was more autocratic than democratic. I think that would be fair to say. But it was probably in pursuit of sort of liberal goals and economic development. It did fail, it has to be said, on a number of fronts by the end in the 70s in terms of its political reform, and that it's that weakness of its sort of political reform at the time, which ultimately yielded to the Islamic Revolution in 1979. But the 1979 revolution was yet another attempt to try and sort of bridge that gap between sort of political aspiration and reality, and to move the country into the direction of a democratic settlement. And of course, that was hijacked and failed, and it was hijacked really by the clerics. And the clerics then took it into a completely different direction. You had a lot of the sort of the apparatus of a republic. It's an Islamic republic after all. But in reality, what happened was that a secular autocracy, if you can put it that way, was replaced by a religious dictatorship, and it became increasingly bad for the people of Iran. So I think one of the reasons people look back on the pre-revolutionary period with such nostalgia is that at least they think that at the time, in terms of the material and social progress, was so much more advanced than what you see today, and that they were moving in a particular direction that they thought was useful. But I think we need to be careful about being too rosy about the earlier period, because clearly there was a reason why there was a revolution in 1979, and it was partly as a consequence of immense dissatisfaction, but also I would suggest a little bit of ignorance about what the consequences of having a religious revolution would be. I think some people had different expectations of it, and of course it didn't work out. And we've had 47 years, I think, of what has turned out to be the worst type of religious despotism that you could imagine.
Let's go back even further back than that, because the Iranian people are very cultured. I think in previous decades, previous centuries, they were not seen as particularly Islamic nation, and the version of Islam that they conduct now is very different from that in other parts of the Middle East. How did Iran develop as a nation? When was it founded, and what was it founded from?
So, I mean, in terms of the development of Iran as a sort of a distinct as a distinct state, a polity, a peoples, whatever. I mean, most Iranians will tell you that it goes back at least 2,500 years to the foundation of the Persian Empire under Cyrus the Great. Of course, we have to be careful, Ian, about reading too far back into some of these nationalist narratives, get a bit carried away. And even in Iran today, they say 5,000, 6,000 years, so on and so forth. But I think, there's always been quite a strong sense of an Iranian identity, at least for 2 millennium. And it's had a very strong cultural identity, a very strong, as you say, cultured identity. And it sort of emerged in through the modern period as something which, of which Islam was a part of that identity, but was simply an aspect of it, and certainly not the sort of central aspect of it that you see today. Even Iranian intellectuals talk of 3 parts to Iranian identity. They talk about an Islamic part, a pre-Islamic part, an Iranian ethnic part, and then actually they talk also about a Western element that's introduced to it really from the 18th and 19th century onwards. And these 3 bits fuse together to create, what we've developed as a modern Iranian national identity. But certainly the ethnic identity or the cultural identity that precedes that is very, very deep. And by some measure, Iran is the longest, I think the oldest of the regional states, and one of the oldest, polities in the world.
So why I don't know whether this is something you want to get into yourself at all, but why do you think it is that there are so many people in this country that we see particularly on social media, that seem to think that the Iranian regime is actually a better choice than a Western democratic regime?
Part of it is just plain ignorance. I mean, it's also part of it is people don't know anything but the Islamic Republic. Also, other people have bought into the myth, and it is a myth, of the Islamic Revolution as a sort of an anti-imperial, anti-capitalist venture, which they sort of buy into. And I've, talked to many people on the European left who see Iran as a great model and a template of how to stand up to the United States. And I've even had encounters with some of these people. I said, if you want to stand up to the United States, you do it. I mean, I don't know why the poor Iranians have to do it for the last 47 years. Most Iranians don't want to do that. Most Iranians want to have fairly normal relations with the outside world and actually quite Western leaning in their cultural attitude. So I think there's a sort of an ideological bent that emerges from the fact that the Islamic Revolution was seen as part of this great third world anti-imperialist, anti-capitalist movement, and many people on the left have bought into this. I mean, the late great Fred Halliday, used to talk about the anti-imperialism of fools, and I mean that's basically what it is. I mean, it's people buying into a fiction that serves their own political agenda. And, they don't really listen. I thought your introduction was absolutely right to say that it's time we listen to what Iranians themselves want, not what people abroad want the Iranians to think. Yeah. Let's talk to the Iranians and ask them what they want.
And it's not it's not difficult to find out what they want. I mean, just do a search on Instagram and you can see. And I have yet to hear a single Iranian say, I really think this was the wrong thing for the Americans and the Israelis to do. Thank you very much indeed. That's Professor Ali Ansari, Professor of Iranian History at the University of St Andrews. Jake Wallace-Simons joins me now, columnist for the Daily Telegraph and broadcaster. Jake, very good evening to you. What do you make of this phenomenon of people who seem to see Iran through some, what shall we say, rose-tinted spectacles, if not red-tinted spectacles?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, Ali Ansari put it very well, giving it the historical context. It's really the kind of afterlife of a Soviet Union propaganda position that sought to pit every third world, as it was known then, country against capitalism, against the capitalist imperialist West. And those ideas still flourish on the hard left today. And they've combined really with jihadism. They seem to find this weird alliance with jihadis. And jihadism really is inspired by Hitlerism, if you go back in time to the Second World War, because Hitler's anti-Semitism was translated into Arabic culture by Hajj Amin al-Husseini, who then was the leader of the Palestinians, took root in the Muslim Brotherhood, which then gave rise to all the jihadi movements we have today, and the Iranian regime was inspired by the Muslim Brotherhood as well. So it's this convergence of these two of the afterlives of the two worst regimes of the 20th century. And it just makes me sick, because I think for the modern hard left activist, it's not even about the history. It's not about the real people in Iran and their lives. It's not about human rights, actually, because they were totally silent when more than 30,000 Iranians were massacred on the streets of Iran in 2 days in January. Then they didn't shout about human rights. It's only when the Americans and the Israelis try to save those poor Iranian people from their 47 years of torment at the hands of these mad mullahs that suddenly people find their voices and find a concern for international law, because it fits their own politics. It's about themselves, really. They can only see things through the prism of Palestine's right, Israel, the West, Britain is wrong, and they cannot see outside of that bubble. And I think that's really deplorable and hypocritical.
So what can be done to counter it?
Well, I think that people need to have their eyes opened to the reality. There's a reason, as you've said, that every single Iranian that you ever hear and freely speaking on the internet is embracing this military action, loves Israel for the freedom that it promises to give them, and loves the United States. Now, that doesn't mean they love Trump, doesn't mean they necessarily love Netanyahu, but these are people who have been living under tyranny, actual tyranny of the sort that your average activist on a university campus here can't even imagine. So these people need to open their eyes, listen to the reality, and try and have some empathy, for goodness sake. Try and have some empathy for what real people are going through. This isn't about political posturing, culturally appropriating a keffiyeh as a fashion symbol to wear to your Islington dinner party, or to wave a Palestinian flag in Trafalgar Square. This is about real people's lives who want their freedom just as we have it, and the Israelis and the Americans are giving it to them.
Jake, thank you very much indeed. That's Jake Wallace-Simons there, columnist for the Daily Telegraph and a broadcaster. Right, we're going to come to your calls next, because I wonder if you have an explanation as to why these people seem to be siding with the Iranian regime over the Iranian people. I think it's very simple. They just hate Israel. 9:20.
This is LBC.
Close your eyes. Take a deep breath. And come on in to Classic FM Calm, LBC's soothing sister station. Find peace in the music with Classic FM Calm. Listen on Global Player or ask your smart speaker to play Classic FM Calm.
At Kia, we know that inspiration begins with a first. Your first job, your first love, your first home.
Now it's time for your first drive in the new Kia EV2 at our First Drive weekends. It's your chance to be one of the first to test drive the Kia EV2 with its innovative technology and elegant eye-catching design. It's small in size, but big in personality. Discover what driving electric really means. Search First Drive weekends to reserve your place today.
Kia, movement that inspires.
Serious about the right vitamins for you and your family? Trust VitaBiotics, the UK's #1 vitamin company for expert nutritional care for every age and lifestyle. Vitamins for everyone, including well man, well woman, well baby and well kid. From Boots, pharmacies and vitabiotics.com. For #1 verification, see vitabiotics.com.
If you bought a home on a holiday park in the UK, what you thought you were getting may not be what you ended up with. From unexpected site fee increases, running costs, a huge depreciation in value, many owners feel they've been missold. If you think this might be you, holidayparkadvicecentre.co.uk could help you receive the compensation you're entitled to. Text ASSIST to 78900 to find out more. That's ASSIST to 78900.
Get your own UK-based account manager, a beekeeper, for support with Pension Bee. Because when your pension is in a good place, you're in a good place. When investing, your capital is at risk.
Iain Dale. Text 84850. This is LBC.
22 minutes past 9 on LBC. Let's go to your calls. Why do you think there are so many people who seem to side with the Iranian regime? Let's go to Ali in Croydon. Hello, Ali.
Hello, Ian. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi,
loud and clear.
Thank you for the time and the program. Before I say anything, I'm a Kurdish by origin, and by default, I am the enemy of the regime. I'm not a supporter of the regime. And I also love Israel. I go as far as to say I would fight for Israel. So I'm not anti-Israel or anything like this. But my question is, for so long we've been told that West is pro-democracy, human rights, and all of this. And that was the reason we loved West, because of the human rights, because of we be able to choose our own government. But right now, Donald Trump is saying that I have somebody to put in place, like what he's done in Venezuela. And the way he's heading is going to play out very badly for the future of security of the world. So if Donald Trump goes around the world and change the world leaders that he doesn't like, what about the Russians? What about the Chinese?
Well, I think that is a valid argument. Even though I support what they're doing, there's no going back. They've done it now, so they need to carry it through. But I want to know what the plans are for what happens when they have. If the regime does go, what happens then?
What happens after that? What is your plan to put? You see people calling up and they saying we love the crown prince and all of these and we don't care and we want to die. But I've seen 3 videos today that women and children are screaming when the bombs are dropping. What about these innocent people that they get killed? You might argue that say, okay, they killed 30 or 40,000 people 2 weeks ago. I understand that totally. But can you guarantee me that this regime will fall by bombing from the air?
Well, there are never any guarantees, are there? That's the issue.
They bombed Saddam Hussein for 12, 13 years, from 90 to 2003, and he didn't move. The only thing they achieved was Saddam Hussein regime became more brutal toward its own citizens. Iran is 3 times or 2 times larger than Iraq. You cannot change the regime with bombing from the air, and you don't know whether the civilians going to get killed or the Ayatollahs. What I'm saying, what is your plan for after this? How are you going to bring all these people together?
Well, I guess the answer that Trump would give, well, it's not up to me, it's up to the Iranian people to decide their future.
I totally understand and I appreciate that, but that's not what he's saying. He's saying that we had someone in place to put it in place after the regime, but he was killed. Now, he's probably what I'm saying is not about the democracy. It's not about helping us to achieve democracy. What it appears to be is about going around the world and whoever you don't like and is not pro-American or doesn't submit to America, remove it and put someone that says yes to us.
I do think this is a bit
we are fighting for.
I think Iran is a very, very different country to Iraq in all sorts of different ways. And from the Iranians that I have watched these videos on Instagram, and okay, maybe they aren't a representative sample, but they do not think that it will be like Iraq, because clearly there was no plan for a new regime in Iraq, and you would hope that people have learned lessons from that. But I understand your scepticism there, Ali. Thank you very much. Now, Alan says, Mohsin Ali doesn't support the Iranian regime and has said as much explicitly and publicly. He attended an anti-war demonstration because he opposes war on Iran, and that's his position. Well, is it really indeed? I think it's very clear what Mohsin Ali is, and I'm going to say this without libeling him. But the fact is, he, on the day of the Gaza attack on Israel, killing 1,200 people, he welcomed it. And he's had to sort of resile from that a bit, running for Green Party leader. He attended this rally, which I think was organised by the Stop the War Coalition. So ostensibly you can say, well, he was attending a Stop the War Coalition rally. Well, you listen to some of the speeches in that, and it was quite clear what that was all about. It was anti-America, it was anti-Israel, it was pro-Iran. So draw your own conclusions, because when Zach Polanski comes back on this radio station and we do another phone-in with him, believe me, I shall be quizzing him on this, because that man is not fit to be deputy leader of any party, let alone the Green Party. Right, let's go to another call. It's David in Hendon. David, hi.
Hello, good evening. Yes, I think the glue that holds the Greens, although Polanski seems to be Jewish, the left, Corbyn, the whole lot, they hate Jews. Simple as that. It goes right the way back, as your previous caller said, Jake Wallace Simpson. Was it Jake Wallace?
I think hang on a second. I do need to sort of slightly pick you up on that, because I think you're right. There are some people whose hatred of Jews drives this, but there are other people whose hatred of Israel drives this. Now, you might say, well, it's one and the same thing, but I think we do have to draw a little bit of a distinction there.
Not really, no, I don't think so. I don't agree at all. 1929, there's no state of Israel. There's a massacre in Hebron on the Jewish community there by the Arabs, the Palestinians. That was before Israel was founded. 1929, almost 100 years ago. They hate Jews. It's as simple as that. It's all the way back to then. The Mufti of Jerusalem meeting Hitler in 1936 to plan the extermination of the Jews, including in what was called Palestine. No, they hate Jews. It's as simple as that. Last week, I was in Golders Green on Saturday night when the strike, when it took place in Tehran. Hundreds of Iranians dancing in the streets of Golders Green Road with Jewish people waving Israeli and Iranian flags. They were so happy. I was there.
Yeah, no, I've read reports of that. That absolutely happened. And you wouldn't get that with the Stop the War Coalition lot. They wouldn't be dancing, would they?
No, because they hate Jews.
Okay, well, you've made that point repeatedly. Thank you very much indeed. 0345 6060 973. Why is it that so many people seem to relish the fact that America and Israel have launched this joint attack, and it's yet another excuse to be anti-American and anti-Israeli. I think it's a fundamentally anti-British stance to take. I don't understand why people, and it is people on the left. I mean, let's not mince our words here. You're not getting people on the right saying these kind of things, defending the Ayatollah theocracy, defending some of the things that autocracy has implemented. I think it's also partly driven by total ignorance ignorance about the history of Iran and the Iranian Revolution in 1979 and what's happened since. Keep your calls coming. It's 9:31. News headlines on LBC with Daryl Jackson.
The UK says it's bolstering defences with warship HMS Dragon expected to leave for Cyprus next week after its weapons systems are refitted. More flights are being arranged to help British nationals stranded in the Middle East, with a first evacuation plane due to leave Oman this evening. Israeli strikes on Tehran are continuing for a fifth day. They claim to have carried out a wide-scale strike on an Iranian military compound. Earlier, the US torpedoed an Iranian warship in the Indian Ocean. It says in total it's hit 2,000 targets since Saturday. And the Prime Minister's insisting the special relationship with the US will endure despite criticism over his initial refusal to allow America to use British military bases in raids on Iran. Meanwhile, NATO's former Deputy Supreme Allied Commanders told LBC the war will last much longer than anticipated, becoming a very, very prolonged, nasty state of affairs. LBC weather cloudy across Scotland and Northern Ireland, turning wet. Dry elsewhere with some patchy low cloud. A milder night for most, lows of 5 degrees.
This is LBC.
You've probably been with the same energy supplier for decades. And why wouldn't you be? Loyalty matters. But lately, bigger hasn't always felt better. You've probably dealt with long waits and endless automated menus in search of someone who can actually help. Octopus Energy is now Britain's biggest energy supplier, trusted by over 8 million customers, because we do things differently. Our people focus on the most important thing, you. When you call, you'll speak to a real person. No robotic scripts, no computer says no, just an honest conversation with someone who actually wants to help. Join the millions who've already made the move. Octopus Energy, recommended by Which a record 9 years running. Visit octopus.energy/better for verification.
Amazon offers term time working to their employees, like Anton, who's home to look after his daughters during their holidays.
Hello?
To him, this is the best sound in the world. Actually, maybe that's the best sound of all. Now that's term time working, offered at Amazon. 10 weeks off guaranteed per year. Mix of paid holiday and unpaid time off. Conditions apply.
Check your retirement savings are on track with PensionBee's easy-to-use app. Because when your pension is in a good place, you're in a good place. When investing, your capital is at risk.
Iain Dale. Call 0345 6060 973. Text 84850. Alexa, send a comment to LBC.
Right, let's take a few WhatsApp and text messages. Here's one from Stephen, who says, "The enemy of my enemy. The left hates the West. They want to tear the system down and see the mullahs as an enemy of the West, thus their friend. Stupidly, of course. Communists sided with the Islamic Revolution and, in repayment, got jailed or killed." Another one here from Colin, who says, "No one is siding with Iran. They're against a deranged sociopath and a murderous maniac. Do you really think they were acting altruistically?" Not sure I quite see the sense of that, because there are people siding with Iran. I mean, there are others who say, well, of course, no one will shed a tear over the death of the Ayatollah, but we think the action is wrong. Well, as I say, everyone's entitled to believe that the action was wrong. But to actually come out in support of a tyrannical regime, I don't know what motivates these people apart from evil. Grace is in Ealing. Hi, Grace.
Hi. Yeah, as someone who's kind of mostly on the left, it's really frustrating to me that some people on the left want to spend more time protesting about things like this rather than complaining about the millions of people who've been doomed to die because of overseas aid cuts. Why are people who are supposedly on the left not most concerned and making the most noise about our planet's most disadvantaged people? I mean, if you're going to be angry with Trump, you could start off by making more noise about the aid cuts that he implemented and how our government followed suit. But people who are supposed to be on the left don't really talk about people who don't have food or clean water. They seem to want to make more noise about this, and I don't really understand. And I just kind of thinking back to when I was a student at UCL, and I had conversations with the Muslim student group there. They were brilliant. We had, conversations about how we have shared views about the existence of a creator, that we think that science points to the existence of a creator, and a lot of Muslims in this country are really fantastic people. But some people want to kind of presume that there's this binary between West and some version of Islam that most Muslims wouldn't necessarily adhere to.
I'm going to have to ask you, when you say that there is evidence of science behind, how did you put it? There is science behind the creator. So you think God is an invention of science?
No, I think that various things about science suggest that there has to be a designer, a creator, that it couldn't have been that things came about entirely on their own without a director in place to direct and implement the existence of the universe and the biological world.
Well, maybe that's an argument for another day, because I do find that quite a fascinating viewpoint. Because I think to me that goes against all the evidence that there has to be some scientific explanation. It can't have just been some godlike figure that created us all. But anyway, as I say, that's deviating, and that's my fault for.
Yeah, I could certainly explain that more on another occasion. But I think that part of the difficulty that a lot of us have now is that we've got so much information coming at us all the time in all directions. We kind of instinctively want to simplify things by thinking, I'll group these other people into these categories. I'll lump these people as good and these people as bad, because the nuance gets lost while we're all trying to cope with so much information in a way that we haven't necessarily had so much coming at us in terms of information media in prior decades before everything became digital online. And it's just kind of easier to think, well, those people are evil over there. And if we can group people as being good and bad and say, well, I'm on the good side and all those people over there are on the bad side. And again, my enemy's enemy is my friend. So, if Trump is bad, then the Ayatollah must be good by their way of thinking. If we can oversimplify like that, it's easier to imagine that we're good and heroic and noble because we're standing up against Trump or whatever. And again, I'm furious with Trump. I think he's evil. But that doesn't make the Ayatollah good, because humanity is so much more complicated and nuanced than we want to believe it to be. And it is indeed insulting to people in Iran who have really suffered under the Ayatollah, but some people would want to just come out in support of him. But I think there's as well as the animosity towards the State of Israel, and I think you were right to make a distinction between Jewish people and Israel, although there's a lot of overlap, they're not exactly the same. But it's not only that. I think there's a more complicated history as well that I've seen.
It's even worse than that, isn't it? Because if people are against the State of Israel, they seem to be ignorant of the fact that there are 2 million Arabs among the population of the State of Israel, and they have exactly the same rights as every other Israeli citizen. So if you are against the State of Israel, you're actually discriminating against 2 million Arabs as well, who live in perfect, as far as I know, as far as I've been told and read about, live in sort of relative harmony with the rest of their fellow Israeli citizens. Grace, thank you. Mike says, I agree we should not mourn the Iranian leadership, for it was barbaric. Can you guarantee that the Iranians will be under less barbaric leadership in the future? Well, no one can guarantee anything, but you would have to hope that any regime that followed this would not be as barbaric as what the predecessor was. Anyway, Mike continues, if not, wouldn't it have been wise to have a plan before they went in? Well, yes. I don't know that they haven't got a plan. I'm somewhat doubtful as to whether they have a plan beyond saying, well, it's up to the Iranians what happens now. He continues, the American people have not yet had it explained to us in a credible fashion why we needed to go in now, and troops are already coming back in body bags. If there is a plan, I suggest we are informed. Otherwise, the vacuum will lead to hyperbole. The Iraqi Kurds kind of thought they were in for a better lot on the back of US promises, and look at what happened to them. Well, again, I think there is a bit of ignorance about the state of Iraq at the moment. I think it did go through many, many years of absolute turmoil. But I was talking to someone the other day about this, and they reckon that Iraq is a much better place to be in now than it was under Saddam Hussein. Now, Again, I've got no sort of first-hand evidence of that, but that was what I was told. David's in Bayswater. Hello, David.
Hi, and great discussion. Thank you for having me. So, I first of all, I wanted to agree with you what you said about Iraq. It's a different political landscape because in Iraq, it was a Sunni minority ruling over a Shia majority. But the one thing it would have in common with Iran is that if the regime in Iran is overthrown, there'll be a power vacuum. Okay, because there's no obvious successor and there are many different groups vying for power. So my overarching worry is that hundreds of thousands of Iranians might die because the IRGC still is heavily armed and they are the defenders of the regime. So what has to be done is they have to be disarmed. And the only way to do that is if America really wants to protect the people, they have to put troops in. Bombing is not going to do the job. It really won't, because the IRGC will still have their arms. So either America puts up or shuts up.
Not if their weapons stores are bombed.
Well, who's to guarantee where all the weapons will be anyway? Because you can take weapons and carry them with you. Do you see what I mean?
Well, you can, but we know for a fact that Israeli intelligence has been extremely important here, and I suspect if they can hack the traffic light system in Tehran, I suspect that they have intelligence as to where all the IRGC weapon stores are.
But they could be spreading them all over the place. But anyway, it's an interesting point you make. But I just wanted to also refer to what Rubio said when he let the cat out of the bag and referred to the fact that the Americans were carrying out this war in response to Israel, telling them they were going to bomb Iran and that they did it. They felt they had to do it. The fact that he's rowed back in it, isn't it obvious? Don't you think so? Why would he have said it in the first place if it wasn't true?
Well, I agree with you. I thought that was
a catalyst, but it totally undermines the reasons Trump is giving for this attack.
It's a bizarre thing to have said.
Yeah. So I just feel that if you set out on a project with the wrong intentions, it's inevitably going to end badly. If you have the right moral compass when you're doing it, and things are more likely to turn out. But the Americans and Israel are doing it, and not trumped up, because I do understand Israel feels threatened, but I don't think that their case for invading is proven. And I think the likelihood of a very bad outcome is very high, because things the sanctions have destroyed the economy in Iran. People are living in such desperate poverty. So on top of that, to bring chaos to that, it's the last thing the Iranians need. I know 30,000 were killed, but
you say that. You say that, but every single Iranian that you talk to and see sort of talking about this, they say the exact opposite, that they are absolutely delighted that this is happening. So why should we think we know better than them?
Well, I'll tell you what. I'll give you a slightly different point. These are keyboard warriors. There's 92 million people living in that country. I tried to imagine, Ian, if I was a 45-year-old Iranian living in a small town in Iran and I'm living in desperate poverty, do I want to have a civil war, and my standard of living drops lower, or do I want to just eke out a better living? What do I want? Do I want American?
I want to be freed from the tyranny that I've lived under since 1979.
But many states in the Gulf, they live in police states and they don't have political freedom. The difference is they have good economies because the West have supported them. So the people are quiescent. But in Iran, the people are rebelling, partly because of the lack of human rights, but because their economic status is so bad. You know, the Iranian rial is $1 to 1 million riyals. The people's standard of living has fallen through the floor, and it's affected their medical care and everything. Everything in that country is down the pan.
So why wouldn't you want to change?
Well, because at the moment, the way this change is being carried out is going to make it even worse, and people are going to get even desperate.
Well, I don't think it could be worse. I think that if you believe in any semblance of freedom, and you're right about some of the other regimes in the Middle East, I'm not denying that. If you want any semblance of freedom and the prospect of a good economic future, you want this regime out of the way. That's certainly what I would think. David, thank you. Now, there's a bit of news from the Financial Times this evening. Iranian Kurdish armed groups are in talks with the Trump administration about whether they could play a role in the ongoing US-Israeli military campaign against the Iranian regime. Now, this has involved conversations about whether to attack Iranian security forces in a possible ground offensive led by the groups from Iraqi territory, where they are based. People familiar with the discussions have said. Well, I mean, that's an interesting development. But what we don't want to happen is that you have different groups representing different sort of sectarian interests, because that's where Syria went badly wrong, isn't it? Where you had all the different groups with different motivations from different areas fighting it out between themselves. That really would be a civil war if that happened. Right, we'll take more of your calls in a moment. It's 9:46.
Coming up at 10 on LBC, Ben Kentish.
Keir Starmer thinks Donald Trump has no viable plan for Iran, but how confident are you that Trump's war will achieve anything? Plus, MPs are branded morons for staging a dance-off while the Middle East burns.
Ben Kentish at 10. Listen on our free Global Player app or the LBC app.
Nothing beats that just booked feeling. Because when you book a Jet2 holiday, you start dreaming of pool days and seeing the sights. Get ahead for summer. Book now with just a £60 deposit per person. Choose from our best rooms and hotels and save £200 per couple. Nothing beats a Jet2 holiday. Package holidays you can trust. APTRA Natural Protected. Subject to availability and conditions.
Looking for a fixed passive income backed by real demand? With ulesprosperity.com, you buy the car, we rent it from you for a set period. You stay the legal owner and we pay you up to £600 per month in fixed rental income. No hassle, no maintenance, no tenants. It's a straightforward asset-backed rental agreement. Visit ulesprosperity.com for conditions and to learn more. That's ulesprosperity.com. Simple, steady, secure.
If you were missold a home on a holiday park, holidayparkadvicecentre.co.uk could help you receive compensation. Text ADVICE to 78900.
Everything dinner at Ocado. Save on sausages, tinned tomatoes, and get a great price on garlic. Then splurge on the fancy pasta. The kind you know you're pronouncing wrong, which means it must be good. Save and splurge at Ocado, the online supermarket. Select lines only, geographical restrictions, minimum spend and charges apply. Offers end 24th of March. Terms and offer info at ocado.com/terms.
And now your travel news. It's starting to look a bit congested on the A4872 southbound. We're hearing reports people are slowing down to look at the Volkswagen Transporter sales event. Apparently you can get £1,500 off any new Transporter. That's any variant, any trim, and any colour until the 31st of March. Now that's a deal worth queuing for. Search VW Transporter offers. UK retail customers 18 plus. Discount applies to price of all new Transporters ordered by 31st of March and delivered by 30th of June.
Iain Dale on LBC.
Daniel says, I detest both the current Israeli and American governments and think the current war on Iran is illegal and unnecessary considering the ongoing impact to household budgets that are undergoing a cost of living crisis. However, I will not mourn the loss of the Ayatollah or his regime. There is a difference. Jay's in Willesden. Hi, Jay.
Hi, and thanks for taking my call. I actually agree with what Daniel's just texted. I think you're right. A lot of it is just hatred of Israel and blatant anti-Semitism, which needs to be stamped out. I think that's unquestionable. I think, though, there's a question mark over what proportion of people are sort of almost supportive of Iran because they hate Israel, and what proportion are supportive of Iran because of the phrase used by your previous caller, my enemy's enemy is my friend. And I think a lot of people see Israel as an enemy because of the double standards that is applied. So we look at the sanctions imposed on Iran, on Syria, on Libya, Russia, Congo. I think there are 30 plus countries that the UK has imposed sanctions on, likewise for the United States and most of the West. There are no sanctions on Israel, despite it being in breach of countless UN resolutions. I think at the last count it was over 40. It might be even more now, given some of the activities of the Israeli government over the last 2 years. Yet not a single sanction imposed against Israel. And we know there are blatant breaches of human rights and human rights abuses. You look at the West Bank, and you've called it out in the past yourself. You kindly allowed me to ask a question to Zippy Hotovely when you had her on a year ago. And I asked her about the breaches of human rights and basically the murder.
I remember that call.
Do you? Oh,
I do.
How do you? You made my day.
No, it was quite a moment, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think LBC posted it and it went quite viral on YouTube, so I'm immensely proud of that. Thank you, Iain. But back to the point. You rightly said to Zippy Hotovely on that occasion, you said that's a bit of a cop-out, your answer. We still haven't seen any justification for the killing of so many civilians in the West Bank. And what is the penalty that Israel faces? And there is none. And I think that's a really, really, really deep frustration that so many feel, including, and it's really important to emphasize this, including many Jews, including many Jewish Holocaust survivors. And they also have a deep dislike of the current Israeli government and Zionism, certainly the extreme form of Zionism, which believes in creating a greater Israel, which by de facto means ethnically cleansing or killing all Palestinians in the Gaza and the West Bank. So I think it's that double standards. And the moment we start treating Israel the same we treat everyone else that breaches UN resolution, that breaches international law, that is when I think people won't look at Israel and say, right, Iran is now my friend because my enemy's enemy is my friend, if that makes sense. And I think we need to deal with that double standards.
Okay, Jay, thank you very much. Steve says, Ian, you falsely describe anti-war protesters as hard left. No, I don't. They are hard left. And crass. Yeah, they are. What is crass is your gross misrepresentation of these protests, which are clearly not in support of the Iranian regime. They are against an illegal war, which has no clear goals and which has caused predictable chaos and further violence across the Middle East and blind support for the dangerous ambitions of Israel in the region. What a load of old nonsense you utter there, Steve. Let me explain why. Because we haven't seen a single Stop the War coalition march or protest about the war in Ukraine, an illegal war perpetrated by war criminal Vladimir Putin. Now, if the Stop the War coalition is to be seen as politically neutral or balanced, then surely it should be launching protests against that war. And they will say, oh, we've made a statement. Oh, brilliant. What about all the other wars in the world, in Sudan, in the Congo, and various other places? We don't see Stop the War coalition doing that because America and Israel are not involved. That is why I accuse those who go on these marches as being hard left. Now, the Palestinian marches, I think, are a different kettle of fish here, although you have got the anti-Israel aspect of it. But, I mean, that is more complex for those. But here it is quite clear that the motivation of the people going on that protest over the weekend, which was billed as a pro-Iran protest, I have to say, and you look at some of the posters that were appearing at that protest in support of the Iranian regime. So don't give me this rubbish that these people are not hard left, anti-American, anti-Israelis, because they absolutely are. Let's go to Amanda in Dublin. Hello, Amanda.
Hi. I was phoning because you were talking about, you said that it was unfair of people to protest against Israel because that would mean that they were also against the Palestinians that live in Israel too.
Yeah.
Who live, in your words, equally.
No, I said Arabs. I didn't say Palestinians because you're talking. I imagine that you're talking about Palestinians on the West Bank and, of course, in Gaza. I was talking about the Arabs who live within the boundaries of Israel, who are Israeli citizens, who have voting rights, who have exactly the same rights.
But they do not have exactly the same rights. It is a two-tier system. It's a two-tier legal system and it's a two-tier employment system. The Palestinians living within Israel will get paid wages to do whatever jobs they do. And you can call them Arabs or you can call them Palestinians. They're Palestinians mostly. There are some people who will come in from other countries around Israel, but it's mainly Palestinians because they've nowhere else to go. That was their home before. They accepted Israeli citizenship, or they applied for Israeli citizenship and they got it, but they aren't treated as equal at all. It's a two-tier justice system. They have recently brought in the death sentence in Israel for Palestinians, not for Israelis. They lock up children for throwing stones. Only Palestinians, not Israelis.
You're talking in the Palestinian territories. I'm talking about within the state of Israel.
I'm talking about within Israel as well. It's a two-tier legal system, a two-tier justice system.
Do they have the same voting rights? Yes, they do. There are Arab members in the Knesset.
There are Arab members in the Knesset. Yes, there are. And they are vastly outnumbered by the Israeli ones.
Well, of course they are. Of course they are, because the population is.
I mean,
sorry?
What do you think they can do? How do you think that this is an equal system? If they commit a crime, they will be dealt with far more harshly because they will be dealt with by military court, not by civil court. That's past it.
Well, I'm not going to argue with you on that because I don't know enough about the
other thing
Israeli
is,
legal system.
On the protests for Iran, I wouldn't be in support of that leadership, but I do know that that was their spiritual leader that was killed. So maybe you should give people a break on that one. Maybe that.
No, I don't give people a break on that one at all. I don't care if he's a spiritual leader. He was an evil, tyrannical man who was behind the killing of hundreds of thousands of his own citizens. So don't tell me he's a spiritual leader, because what kind of spiritualism is that?
Spiritual leader. I don't. He was their spiritual leader, so you have to. It's like I don't agree with most of the stuff that the Pope says, but I still accept that he's a spiritual leader. But when it comes down to it as well, those bombs that dropped on Iran, the first ones that dropped were on a girls' school, a seminary school, little girls.
Do you know it's not? Well, no. You've just said something.
You've
You've just said something that is totally inaccurate, because the IRGC themselves have accepted that was a bomb that they dropped.
I haven't heard that at all.
Well, I suggest you go and do your research then, because they issued a statement saying that actually it was them. I assumed that it was an Israeli bomb or an American bomb that had gone off course. But, I mean, if you're seriously suggesting that either the Americans or the Israelis would deliberately bomb a school that happened to be next to an army barracks, then I suggest you need to give your head a shake.
I wouldn't necessarily think the Americans would. They weren't the first ones to start dropping bombs. And I am not against Israel. I am against Zionism. I'm against the regime.
Well, hang on a second. The whole point of Zionism is to have a homeland for the Jewish people. So, I mean, the essence of Zionism surely is, right, why shouldn't the Jewish people have their own homeland?
Their leader, Netanyahu, is a secular Jew, yeah? There's not that he rides on the beliefs of people who are Jewish, but he is not. He doesn't have those beliefs. He doesn't hold those beliefs.
Well, I don't know what that's got to do with the price of fish here. We were talking about Zionism and whether Zionism, in its original intent to create a homeland for Jews, was, I think that's an entirely reasonable thing to do. Now, you can say, well, Zionism has developed in a different way, and maybe you'd have a point on that. But I think anybody who believes that Israel has a right to exist as a state is automatically defined as a Zionist. Well, that's certainly how I look at it. Amanda, thank you very much indeed, calling from one of my favourite cities, Dublin. Right, that is the end of the show. Thank you for all of your calls and messages this evening. I'll be back tomorrow from 7. If you missed any of this evening's show, you can listen back on our free Global Player Catch-Up app and the LBC app, where you can stay up to date with all the latest news, videos and opinion. Now, tomorrow night on the show, we've got Dr. Sian Williams, TV presenter and psychotherapist. She'll be joining us in the 9 o'clock hour. Coming up at 1 on LBC, it's James Hansen. But right now, it's Ben Kentish.
Iain, thank you very, very much indeed. Hello there, and a very good evening to you this Wednesday night. Welcome to Late Nights with Ben Kentish.